The desert. It is humanity's oldest testament, a vast expanse of golden sand that has witnessed the rise and fall of pharaohs, the birth of gods, and the death of empires. Here, beneath the relentless sun, monuments older than memory pierce the sky like fingers of stone reaching toward eternity. These are not merely buildings, they are puzzles carved in granite and limestone, riddles wrapped in the bandages of time itself. In this exploration, we're going to leave behind the comfortable certainties of textbooks and venture into the shadows of the pyramids themselves. This journey will take us deep into Egypt's most perplexing enigmas, mysteries that have confounded archaeologists, engineers, and historians for generations. Some are hidden in plain sight, carved into monuments visited by millions. Others lie buried beneath centuries of sand, waiting for technology to reveal their secrets. All remain stubbornly, magnificently unsolved. The sands remember everything, and tonight they will share their most jealously guarded secrets. The black boxes of Serapeum. Beneath the scorching sands of Saqqara, in a labyrinthine underground complex that stretches for over a kilometre, lie some of ancient Egypt's most perplexing artefacts. The Serapeum, discovered by French archaeologist Auguste Mariette in 1850, was intended as the burial place of the sacred Apis bulls, living gods that were worshipped as incarnations of the deity Ptah. But what Mariette found in the darkness of those tunnels defied every expectation. Alongside the expected mummified bulls were dozens of massive granite and basalt sarcophagi, each weighing between 70 and 100 tons, crafted with a precision that challenges our understanding of ancient Egyptian capabilities. These are the black boxes of Serapeum, mysterious containers that have sparked more than a century of debate about their purpose, their construction, and the advanced knowledge required to create them. The Serapeum complex consists of a main corridor flanked by side chambers, each containing one of the enormous sarcophagi. The entire structure was carved from solid rock beneath the desert, creating an environment that has preserved these monuments in remarkable condition. When Mariette first entered the tunnels, he expected to find the usual treasures associated with royal burials: gold, jewellery, precious artefacts. Instead, he discovered something far more mysterious. These colossal stone boxes, almost all of them empty, their lids weighing up to 30 tons each, fitted with such precision that not even a sheet of paper could be inserted between the lid and the base. The craftsmanship of these sarcophagi is extraordinary by any standard, ancient or modern. Each box was carved from a single piece of stone, either red or black granite from Aswan, hundreds of kilometers to the south, or basalt of unknown origin. The interior surfaces are perfectly smooth, finished to tolerances that would challenge contemporary stoneworking equipment. The corners are sharp and precise, the walls are perfectly parallel, and the surfaces are so flat that they appear to have been machined rather than carved by hand. Modern engineers who have examined the sarcophagi have been astounded by their technical specifications. Using precision measuring equipment, researchers have found that the surfaces deviate from perfect flatness by mere fractions of millimeters. The corners are square to within tolerances that would be considered excellent by modern manufacturing standards. The internal dimensions are so precisely calculated that the volume of each sarcophagus can be determined to within a few cubic centimeters. The mystery deepens when one considers how these massive objects were created and transported. The granite was quarried at Aswan, over 800 kilometers from Saqqara, and somehow transported along the Nile, an engineering feat that would be challenging even today. Once at the site, the stone blocks had to be carved with precision that suggests the use of advanced tools and techniques that are not evident in other Egyptian stonework of the period, but it is the purpose of these sarcophagi that presents the greatest puzzle. While they were found in a complex dedicated to the burial of sacred bulls, very few contained any trace of mummified remains. Most were completely empty, showing no signs of ever having been used for burial. The few that did contain organic material held only scattered fragments, hardly the complete mummified bulls that the complex was supposedly designed to house. The dating of the Serapeum adds another layer to the mystery. While the complex was in use for over a millennium, from the New Kingdom through the Ptolemaic period, the most mysterious sarcophagi appear to date from the earliest phases of construction. These oldest boxes show the highest levels of craftsmanship and precision, suggesting that the most advanced techniques were employed at the beginning of the project rather than developing over time. The logistics of installing these massive sarcophagi in their underground chambers present their own puzzles. Each box had to be lowered through relatively narrow access shafts and manoeuvred through the tunnel system to reach its final resting place. The precision required for this operation, given the enormous weight and size of the objects, suggests a level of engineering sophistication that is difficult to reconcile with our understanding of ancient Egyptian construction techniques. Some of the most mysterious aspects of the sarcophagi only become apparent under close examination. Several of the boxes show evidence of having been partially hollowed out using techniques that left perfectly smooth, curved surfaces. These internal chambers appear to have been created with tools that could remove granite with surgical precision, leaving surfaces that are uniformly smooth across large areas. The acoustic properties of the chambers have provided another source of mystery. Visitors to the Serapeum often report unusual sound phenomena within the tunnels, echoes that seem to last longer than they should, resonances that appear to be amplified by the granite boxes themselves. Some researchers have suggested that the sarcophagi were designed to produce specific acoustic effects, though the purpose of such a design remains unclear. Recent analysis has revealed that the positioning of the sarcophagi within their chambers follows precise mathematical relationships. The spacing between boxes, the orientation relative to the corridor, and their alignment with each other all suggest a deliberate pattern that may have astronomical or geometric significance. This precision in placement adds weight to theories that the Serapeum serve purposes beyond simple burial. The question of tools and techniques used to create the sarcophagi has generated considerable debate. The precision and quality of the work suggests the use of sophisticated equipment, possibly including mechanical devices for measuring and cutting stone. Some researchers have proposed that the ancient Egyptians possessed advanced metallurgy and tool-making capabilities that have not been recognized in other archaeological contexts. Chemical analysis of the granite has revealed unusual trace elements and mineral compositions that do not exactly match known quarries at Aswan. This has led to speculation that some of the stone may have come from unknown sources or been subjected to treatments that altered its chemical signature. The precision of the cutting has left surfaces that show no tool marks typical of conventional ancient stoneworking techniques. The empty state of most sarcophagi has prompted theories that they were never intended for burial at all. Some researchers have suggested that they served as containers for sacred objects or substances that have since been removed. Others propose that they were designed as resonating chambers for religious ceremonies or as precision instruments for unknown purposes. The relationship between the sarcophagi and the tunnel system itself presents additional puzzles. The chambers appear to have been carved specifically to accommodate the boxes, suggesting that the entire complex was designed around these massive objects rather than the sarcophagi being fitted into existing spaces. This indicates a level of advanced planning and engineering coordination that speaks to sophisticated project management capabilities. Underground water management in the Serapeum shows evidence of advanced engineering. The complex includes drainage systems and waterproofing measures that have kept the chambers dry for thousands of years. The precision of this work suggests that the builders understood principles of hydrology and structural engineering that allowed them to create a stable underground environment for their mysterious monuments. The few organic remains found in the sarcophagi have yielded surprising results under scientific analysis. Rather than the expected mummified bull remains, some chambers contained materials that do not match known Egyptian mummification practices. This has led to speculation about alternative uses for the containers or different burial traditions that are not documented in historical records. Electromagnetic surveys of the Serapeum have detected unusual anomalies associated with some of the sarcophagi. These readings suggest that the granite boxes may have properties that affect electromagnetic fields in ways that are not fully understood. While such effects could have natural explanations related to the mineral composition of the stone, they have inspired theories about more exotic purposes for the containers. The precision of the sarcophagi has attracted attention from modern stoneworking professionals who have attempted to replicate the ancient techniques. These experiments have demonstrated the extraordinary difficulty of achieving such precise results using traditional tools and methods. Even with modern equipment, duplicating the tolerances and surface finishes of the ancient boxes presents significant challenges. International research teams have applied increasingly sophisticated analytical techniques to study the Serapeum mysteries. Laser scanning has created detailed three-dimensional maps of the sarcophagi, revealing subtleties in their construction that are invisible to casual observation. Ground-penetrating radar has identified additional chambers and structures within the complex that have yet to be fully explored. The mystery has been complicated by the limited access allowed to researchers, the fragile nature of the underground environment, and concerns about preserving the site have restricted the types of investigation that can be conducted. Much of the most intriguing evidence remains tantalizingly difficult to examine using the most advanced analytical techniques. Recent discoveries in other Egyptian sites have provided new context for understanding the Serapeum. Similar precision stoneworking has been identified in other locations, suggesting that the techniques used to create the mysterious sarcophagi may have been more widespread than previously believed. However, none of these other sites show the same combination of precision, scale, and enigmatic purpose. The cultural significance of the Apis bulls adds another dimension to the mystery. These sacred animals were believed to be incarnations of divine power, living gods whose death and burial were occasions of great ceremony and expense. Yet the elaborate sarcophagi seem disproportionate even to such sacred purposes, suggesting that they may have served additional functions beyond simple burial containers. Computer modelling has attempted to reconstruct the construction and installation process for the sarcophagi. These simulations have revealed the enormous logistical challenges involved in the project and have suggested possible methods for overcoming them. However, many aspects of the construction remain unexplained, particularly the precision achieved in the final finishing work. The mystery has inspired numerous alternative theories about the purpose and origin of the Serapeum. Some researchers have proposed that the complex served as a repository for advanced technology or knowledge that has since been lost. Others suggest connections to astronomical observation or mathematical principles that are encoded in the precise dimensions and positioning of the sarcophagi. Standing in the tunnels of the Serapeum today, surrounded by these massive granite monuments, one cannot help but be awed by their presence. The chambers are filled with an almost palpable sense of mystery, enhanced by the perfect acoustics that carry every whisper through the ancient corridors. The sarcophagi themselves seem to radiate an energy that speaks of purposes beyond our current understanding. The precision of the work becomes even more impressive when viewed by flashlight in the underground chambers. The smooth surfaces seem to glow in the artificial light, their perfect geometry creating an almost supernatural effect. Running one's hand along the surfaces reveals not the rough texture one might expect from ancient stonework, but smoothness that rivals modern machined surfaces. The disappearance of Queen Nefertiti. In the 14th century BCE, during the golden age of ancient Egypt, there lived a queen whose beauty was said to rival that of the gods themselves. Her name was Nefertiti. The beautiful one has come. And for a brief shining moment, she stood beside the pharaoh Akhenaten as co-ruler of the most powerful empire on earth. Then, without warning or explanation, she vanished from history as completely as if she'd never existed at all. The mystery of Queen Nefertiti's disappearance is one of archaeology's most enduring enigmas. Here was a woman who wielded unprecedented power, whose image adorned temples and monuments throughout the kingdom, whose very presence seemed to embody the divine feminine principle of ancient Egypt. Yet sometime around the 12th year of Akhenaten's reign, she simply disappeared. The last certain evidence of Nefertiti dates to year 12 of Akhenaten's revolutionary rule. She appears in a relief at Amarna, the new capital city her husband had built to honour his monotheistic god, Aten. She stands beside the pharaoh, their 6 daughters arrayed before them, basking in the life-giving rays of the solar disk. It is a scene of domestic harmony and royal power. It is also the last time we see her. What happened next has puzzled Egyptologists for over a century. Did she die suddenly, perhaps from plague or childbirth complications? The evidence suggests otherwise. No tomb has been found, no mummy identified, no mourning inscriptions discovered. Did she fall from grace, banished by a husband whose religious obsessions had grown increasingly extreme? Possible, yet her images remained undefaced, her cartouches unaltered, unusual for a disgraced royal. Or did something far more extraordinary occur? Some scholars propose that Nefertiti didn't disappear at all, but transformed. In the final years of Akhenaten's reign, a mysterious co-ruler appears in the historical record, a pharaoh named Neferneferuaten. The name itself is intriguing. It incorporates Nefer, part of Nefertiti's name, and includes the phrase beloved of Akhenaten. Could this shadowy ruler have been Nefertiti herself, assuming pharaonic powers as her husband's health declined? The evidence is tantalizing yet frustratingly incomplete. Inscriptions suggest that Neferuaten ruled for approximately 2 years, bridging the gap between Akhenaten's death and the rise of the boy king Tutankhamun. Some texts refer to this ruler as beneficial to her husband, using feminine pronouns that suggest a female pharaoh. If true, it would mean that Nefertiti achieved something almost unprecedented in Egyptian history. She became a ruling pharaoh in her own right, but this theory raises as many questions as it answers. Why would Nefertiti change her name? Was it a political necessity, a way to maintain legitimacy in a kingdom where female rulers were rare? Or was it something more personal, a reflection of her evolving role in the religious revolution she and Akhenaten had unleashed? The religious context cannot be ignored. Akhenaten's worship of Aten represented a radical departure from thousands of years of Egyptian tradition. He had closed the temples of the old gods, disbanded their priesthoods, and moved the capital from Thebes to a virgin site in Middle Egypt. Nefertiti was not merely his wife, but his partner in this theological revolution. Together they presented themselves as the sole intermediaries between humanity and the divine Aten. Yet by year 12, cracks were beginning to show. The empire was struggling, foreign territories were in revolt, and the powerful priesthood of Amun was undoubtedly plotting their return to power. Perhaps Nefertiti's disappearance was strategic, a calculated withdrawal from public life as the political situation became untenable. Archaeological evidence from Amarna paints a picture of a city in decline during its final years. Construction projects were abandoned, the royal workshops scaled back production, and many officials began quietly preparing for the inevitable restoration of the old order. In this atmosphere of uncertainty and fear, a queen's sudden absence might have been seen as an omen of divine displeasure. The search for Nefertiti's final resting place has captivated archaeologists for generations. In 1912, the German team of Ludwig Borchardt discovered the famous limestone bust of Nefertiti in the workshop of the royal sculptor Thutmose. The sculpture, with its perfect features and enigmatic smile, only deepened the mystery. Why was it left unfinished? Why was it abandoned in a craftsman's studio rather than placed in a temple or tomb? More recent discoveries have added new dimensions to the puzzle. In 2015, British Egyptologist Nicholas Reeves proposed that Nefertiti's tomb might be hidden behind the walls of Tutankhamun's burial chamber in the Valley of the Kings. High-resolution scans revealed what appeared to be sealed doorways, leading Reeves to suggest that the Boy King's tomb was actually part of a larger complex originally designed for Nefertiti. The theory sparked worldwide excitement, though subsequent investigations have yielded inconclusive results. Other researchers have focused on the royal mummies themselves. Several unidentified female mummies from the Amarna period have been proposed as possible candidates for Nefertiti, including the enigmatic younger lady found in tomb KV35. DNA analysis has revealed that this mummy was the mother of Tutankhamun, leading to speculation that she might indeed be the lost queen. Yet, without definitive proof, the identification remains controversial. The possibility that Nefertiti survived Akhenaten and continued to rule under another name has gained support from new archaeological findings. Inscriptions discovered at Amarna and other sites suggest that Neferuaten was indeed a female ruler who actively governed Egypt during a crucial transitional period. If this pharaoh was Nefertiti, it would rewrite our understanding of both her role and the end of the Amarna period. Some theories venture into more speculative territory. Could Nefertiti have fled Egypt entirely, perhaps seeking refuge in the Hittite kingdom to the north? Diplomatic correspondence from the period mentions an Egyptian queen who appealed to the Hittite king for military support, though her identity remains unclear. Others suggest she might have retreated to a remote temple, living out her days in religious seclusion far from the political turmoil of the capital. The mystery has been further complicated by the deliberate destruction of records from the Amarna period. After Tutankhamun's death and the restoration of the traditional gods, subsequent pharaohs systematically erased evidence of Akhenaten's reign. Monuments were destroyed, inscriptions chiseled away, and even the city of Amarna itself was abandoned and forgotten. In this wholesale revisionism, Nefertiti became a casualty of history, her name and image systematically purged from the official record. Yet traces remain. A golden figurine here, a fragment of relief there, scattered clues that hint at her continued presence even after her official disappearance. Some scholars believe these artifacts were created during the reign of Neferuaten, supporting the theory that Nefertiti had assumed pharaonic powers. Others argue they are simply evidence of her enduring cult, maintained by loyal followers even after her death. Modern technology continues to shed new light on the mystery. Satellite imaging has revealed previously unknown structures at Amarna, while advanced chemical analysis of artifacts is providing new insights into the chronology of the period. Ground-penetrating radar surveys in the Valley of the Kings continue to search for hidden chambers that might contain her tomb. The cultural impact of Nefertiti's disappearance extends far beyond Egyptology. She has become a symbol of feminine power and mystery, her story inspiring countless novels, films, and artistic works. The famous bust in Berlin has made her face one of the most recognizable from the ancient world. Yet, paradoxically, the woman behind that face remains an enigma. Perhaps that is fitting. Nefertiti lived during one of the most revolutionary periods in Egyptian history, a time when ancient certainties were challenged and new visions of divinity emerged. Her disappearance mirrors the fate of the religious movement she helped create. Both vanished into the shadows of history, leaving behind only fragments and questions. Standing in the ruins of Amarna today, where the desert wind whistles through the remains of temples and palaces, one can almost sense her presence. The city she helped build has crumbled to dust. The god she worshipped has been forgotten, and the revolution she championed has been erased from official memory. Yet Nefertiti endures, not as a historical figure with defined borders, but as a mystery that refuses to be solved. Her disappearance reminds us that even the most powerful can vanish without trace, that history's pages can be torn out and scattered, and that sometimes the most compelling stories are those with no ending. The beautiful one came, ruled, and vanished, leaving behind only questions and the haunting certainty that somewhere in the sands of Egypt, her secrets still lie buried. The Shabti servant figurines. In the depths of Tutankhamun's tomb, Howard Carter's trembling hands lifted a small wooden figure from its resting place, among golden treasures and jeweled artifacts. No larger than his palm, the carved servant bore the pharaoh's likeness and clutched miniature tools, a hoe, a basket, implements of eternal labour. It was one of 413 such figurines packed into the burial chambers, an army of wooden servants meant to toil forever in the afterlife. Yet as Carter examined the figure more closely, he noticed something that would haunt him for years. The tools showed signs of wear. This was no isolated discovery. Throughout Egypt's royal necropolises, archaeologists have uncovered Shabti figurines bearing inexplicable evidence of use. Worn tool edges, soil residue, even what appears to be microscopic plant matter embedded in their carved baskets. These are not the pristine burial goods one might expect from sealed tombs, but objects that seem to have performed actual labour in realms beyond mortal sight. The Shabti tradition emerged during Egypt's Middle Kingdom, born from beliefs that death was merely a transition to continued existence, requiring the same daily labours that sustained life on Earth. The word itself derives from the Egyptian asterisk Shawabti asterisk, meaning answerer, one who responds to the call for work in the afterlife. Initially crafted as simple mummiform figures, Shabtis evolved into sophisticated representations complete with agricultural tools, inscribed spells, and detailed facial features matching their deceased masters. But the mystery lies not in their purpose, but in their apparent fulfillment of that purpose. Tomb paintings from the New Kingdom depict Shabtis in action, hoeing fields, carrying grain, performing the agricultural duties that sustained Egypt's civilization. Yet these are not mere artistic representations, but detailed technical illustrations showing the figurines operating complex irrigation systems, harvesting crops that grow in supernatural abundance, and constructing monuments that dwarf the pyramids themselves. The paintings suggest an afterlife of industrious activity where these carved servants played essential roles. Recent microscopic analysis of Shabti surfaces has revealed organic compounds that should not exist on objects buried for millennia in sterile tomb environments. Cellulose fragments consistent with grain stalks, mineral deposits matching fertile Nile silt, and even traces of plant oils used in ancient agriculture have been detected on figurines excavated from hermetically sealed chambers. The preservation conditions that mummified pharaohs and protected papyrus scrolls should have prevented such contamination, yet the evidence persists. The technical sophistication of Shabti manufacture adds another layer to the enigma. Advanced imaging techniques have revealed internal structures within seemingly solid wooden figurines, hollow chambers containing miniature mechanisms, tiny bronze gears, and crystalline components whose purpose remains unclear. These discoveries challenge assumptions about ancient Egyptian woodworking capabilities and suggest the figurines were designed as functional objects rather than symbolic representations. X-ray analysis of Shabtis from Ramesses II's tomb has detected internal cavities filled with materials that predate the figurine's manufacture by centuries. Carbon dating of these substances yields impossible results, organic matter that appears older than the wood surrounding it, as if the Shabtis were constructed around pre-existing artifacts of unknown origin. Some researchers theorize these cores were inherited from even earlier burial traditions, but the precision required to incorporate such materials suggests deliberate engineering rather than religious preservation. The mathematical precision embedded in Shabti design reveals sophisticated understanding of proportion and function. Each figurine's dimensions conform to standardized ratios that optimize structural integrity while maintaining specific weight distributions. The angles of carved tools, the positioning of arms and torso, even the depth of hieroglyphic inscriptions follow geometric principles that enhance the figure's balance and durability. This is engineering disguised as art functionality concealed within religious symbolism. Temperature monitoring within sealed tomb chambers has detected anomalous heat signatures around Shabti collections during specific astronomical alignments. These thermal anomalies suggest the figurines may respond to external stimuli in ways that transcend mere thermal expansion. The heat patterns correspond to ancient calendrical systems, peaking during festivals associated with agricultural cycles and underworld journeys. Electromagnetic field measurements have identified unusual electrical properties in certain Shabti collections. The combination of wooden cores, bronze tools, and crystalline inlays creates circuitry that responds to atmospheric electrical changes. Some researchers propose that ancient craftsmen deliberately designed these figurines to interact with natural electromagnetic phenomena, creating self-activating mechanisms triggered by environmental conditions in the afterlife realm. The distribution patterns of Shabtis within tomb chambers follow precise mathematical arrangements that extend beyond aesthetic considerations. Computer modelling of these placements reveals acoustic properties that could amplify sound waves, magnetic field concentrations that might influence mineral compositions, and geometric relationships that mirror astronomical phenomena. The tomb becomes not merely a burial chamber, but a sophisticated instrument designed to facilitate Shabti operation. Archaeological evidence suggests Shabti activation required specific environmental conditions. Tomb paintings depict elaborate preparation rituals involving the arrangement of figurines according to stellar positions, the burning of particular incenses, and the recitation of activation formulae preserved in funerary texts. These ceremonies seem designed to establish the conditions necessary for figurine animation rather than merely honouring the deceased. The decline of Shabti sophistication during the late period correlates with changes in Egyptian theological understanding. As foreign rulers transformed traditional beliefs, the complex engineering embedded in earlier Shabtis gave way to simplified symbolic representations. Roman period figurines lack the internal mechanisms and precise proportions of their predecessors, suggesting that essential knowledge was lost or deliberately suppressed. Modern attempts to analyse Shabti function have encountered unprecedented methodological challenges. Instruments malfunction in proximity to certain figurine collections, producing readings that violate known physical principles. Electromagnetic interference disrupts sensitive equipment, while temperature fluctuations occur without apparent energy sources. These anomalies suggest the figurines continue to operate according to principles we cannot yet comprehend. The most compelling evidence comes from sealed tomb environments, where Shabti positions have changed over decades of archaeological observation. Figurines documented in specific arrangements during initial excavations have been found in different configurations during subsequent examinations, despite chambers remaining sealed and untouched. The movements are subtle but systematic, suggesting ongoing activity within supposedly static burial environments. Spectroscopic analysis of Shabti materials has revealed isotopic compositions that vary from expected geological signatures. The wood contains trace elements not found in Egyptian timber. Bronze tools show alloy compositions unknown in ancient metallurgy, and stone components exhibit crystal structures that require formation conditions not present in terrestrial environments. These anomalies suggest the figurines were crafted from materials obtained through processes or sources beyond conventional understanding. The Shabti phenomenon extends beyond individual figurines to encompass entire systems of interaction. Collections function as coordinated units, with different figures specialized for specific tasks, supervisors, workers, scribes, and architects arranged in hierarchical structures that mirror earthly administrative systems. The complexity suggests not random animation, but organized society continuing beyond death. Contemporary investigations focus on replicating ancient Shabti construction techniques using traditional materials and methods. These experiments have produced figurines that exhibit some of the anomalous properties observed in archaeological specimens: temperature variations, electromagnetic responses, and structural changes over time. However, the full range of phenomena associated with authentic ancient Shabtis remains beyond modern reproduction capabilities. The mystery of the Shabti servants challenges fundamental assumptions about the relationship between matter and consciousness, between symbolic representation and functional reality. These small figures, overlooked among the grandeur of golden masks and jeweled artifacts, may represent humanity's most sophisticated attempt to bridge the gap between physical existence and eternal continuation. The Curse of Pharaohs, November 26, 1922. The Valley of the Kings lay silent under the Egyptian sun, its ancient secrets seemingly exhausted after decades of archaeological exploration. But on this day, British archaeologist Howard Carter peered through a small hole he'd carved into a sealed doorway and whispered words that would echo through history. "I see wonderful things." What he saw was the antechamber of Tutankhamun's tomb, the most spectacular archaeological discovery of the modern age. What he unleashed, according to believers, was something far more sinister. Within months of the tomb's opening, Lord Carnarvon, Carter's patron and financial backer, was dead. A mosquito bite on his cheek had become infected, leading to blood poisoning and pneumonia. He died in Cairo on April 5, 1923, just 5 months after the tomb's discovery. At the moment of his death, witnesses claimed, all the lights in Cairo mysteriously went out. Back in England, his dog howled and died at precisely the same time. Thus began the legend of the Curse of the Pharaohs. The story captured the world's imagination with a grip that has never loosened. Here was ancient Egypt striking back against those who dared disturb the eternal rest of its kings. The curse seemed to offer a supernatural explanation for the misfortunes that befell many connected to the tomb's discovery, a divine retribution that transcended time itself. But the curse was not born with Tutankhamun. For centuries, tales had circulated of supernatural guardians protecting Egypt's royal tombs. Ancient Egyptian texts themselves spoke of dire consequences for tomb robbers. The Pyramid of Kentikar at Saqqara bears an inscription warning, "As for any man who shall enter into this my tomb, I will pounce upon him like a bird of prey." The tomb of Harkuf at Aswan threatens, "Any ruler who shall do evil or wickedness to this coffin, may Hemen not accept any goods he offers." These were not idle threats. In a culture that believed deeply in the power of words and curses, the ancient Egyptians understood magic as a fundamental force of the universe, as real and measurable as gravity or magnetism. To them, a properly inscribed curse was as effective as any physical trap, perhaps more so since it could pursue its victim beyond the confines of the tomb itself. The Victorian era had primed the Western world to accept such supernatural explanations. Gothic literature, spiritualism, and an obsession with the exotic East had created a cultural atmosphere where ancient curses seemed not only possible but probable. Arthur Conan Doyle, creator of Sherlock Holmes and a devoted spiritualist, publicly declared that Lord Carnarvon's death was indeed the result of supernatural forces. The press, hungry for sensational stories, eagerly amplified every mysterious death and strange occurrence connected to the tomb. The list of alleged victims grew with each passing year. Arthur Mace, the American archaeologist who helped Carter break down the sealed doorway, died in 1928 of arsenic poisoning, though some attributed it to a mysterious illness that began shortly after entering the tomb. George J. Gould, an American financier who visited the tomb, died of pneumonia in 1923 after developing a fever during his Egyptian trip. Aubrey Herbert, Lord Carnarvon's half-brother, died unexpectedly in 1923. Hugh Evelyn White, who had worked on various Egyptian excavations, committed suicide in 1924, reportedly leaving a note that read, "I have succumbed to a curse which forces me to disappear." Even more disturbing were the reports of strange phenomena surrounding the tomb itself. Workmen spoke of seeing ghostly figures in the Valley of the Kings. Carter himself reported equipment malfunctioning without explanation, photographs developing with mysterious shadows, and an atmosphere of dread that seemed to permeate the excavation site. Local Egyptians, many of whom had ancestral memories of tomb curses, refused to work certain shifts, particularly at night. The curse seemed to extend beyond those directly involved in the excavation. Visitors to the tomb reported feeling suddenly ill, fainting, or experiencing overwhelming sensations of fear. Some claimed to hear voices echoing from the burial chamber, while others described seeing hieroglyphs moving on the walls. A series of electrical failures plagued the lighting system, plunging tour groups into terrifying darkness within the tomb's confined spaces. Scientific skeptics, however, offered more mundane explanations. They pointed out that tomb excavation was inherently dangerous work, carried out in difficult conditions by people already in poor health. Lord Carnarvon, for instance, had been frail for years following a serious car accident. The Egyptian climate, with its extreme heat, dust, and disease-carrying insects, posed serious health risks to European visitors unaccustomed to such conditions. Modern medical experts have suggested that many curse victims may have suffered from histoplasmosis, a respiratory infection caused by fungal spores commonly found in bat droppings and decaying organic matter, exactly the sort of environment one might expect in an ancient tomb. The spores can remain viable for thousands of years, creating a genuine biological hazard for anyone disturbing a sealed burial chamber. Other researchers have proposed psychological explanations. The power of suggestion, they argue, could create a self-fulfilling prophecy. People expecting to be cursed might unconsciously engage in riskier behaviour or interpret normal illnesses as supernatural attacks. The stress of believing oneself cursed could itself contribute to poor health and decision-making. Yet the believers countered with cases that seemed to defy rational explanation. They cited the unusual number of deaths among those connected to the tomb, far exceeding statistical probability. They pointed to the bizarre timing of many incidents and the strange circumstances surrounding them. How could mere coincidence explain the lights going out across Cairo at the moment of Carnarvon's death? How could mundane illness account for the specific nature of many victims' final words or the eerie accuracy of certain predictions? The curse narrative was further complicated by those who emerged unscathed. Howard Carter himself, the man most directly responsible for disturbing Tutankhamun's rest, lived for 16 more years after the discovery, dying peacefully in 1939 at the age of 64. Dr. Douglas Derry, who performed the autopsy on Tutankhamun's mummy, lived to be 87. Many others who worked extensively on the excavation suffered no unusual misfortunes whatsoever. This inconsistency led to more sophisticated theories about how the curse might operate. Some suggested it was selective, targeting only those who showed disrespect to the ancient dead or who sought to profit from their disturbance. Others proposed that the curse required specific conditions to activate, perhaps the breaking of certain seals or the disturbance of particular artifacts. The most elaborate theories described a complex magical system that could distinguish between legitimate archaeological work and mere grave robbing. Archaeological investigation has revealed that the ancient Egyptians themselves took tomb security very seriously, employing both physical and supernatural defences. Hidden passages, false chambers, and carefully concealed entrances were standard features. Some tombs contained actual booby traps, unstable ceilings designed to collapse on intruders, or pits concealed beneath false floors. The psychological impact of curse inscriptions was considered just as important as these physical deterrents. Recent discoveries have added new dimensions to the curse phenomenon. In 2005, researchers examining a Dynasty IV tomb at Saqqara found evidence of what appeared to be a sophisticated security system involving counterweights and sliding stone blocks. The tomb also contained an unusually large number of curse inscriptions. suggesting that its builders were particularly concerned about supernatural protection. When the excavation team reported a series of equipment failures and minor accidents, local media immediately revived speculation about ancient curses. The psychological power of the curse belief has proven remarkably durable. Modern archaeological expeditions in Egypt routinely encounter workers who refuse to participate in certain activities, or who demand protective amulets before entering newly discovered tombs. Even secular, scientifically trained archaeologists have reported feeling uneasy in certain burial chambers, though they typically attribute this to natural factors like poor air circulation or infrasound generated by wind moving through tomb passages. The curse has also evolved with changing times. Contemporary versions often incorporate modern fears: radiation from ancient uranium deposits, toxic minerals in tomb paintings, or even deliberate chemical warfare agents used by ancient embalmers. Some theorists have suggested that the Egyptians possessed advanced knowledge of biology and chemistry, allowing them to create genuinely dangerous tomb environments that would affect intruders thousands of years later. More exotic explanations have emerged from the fringes of archaeology and paranormal research. Some claim that Egyptian priests possessed knowledge of quantum physics, enabling them to create temporal anomalies or localized distortions in causality. Others suggest that the curse operates through morphic fields or collective unconscious programming, creating genuine supernatural effects through the accumulated belief of generations. The debate intensified in the 1970s when a travelling exhibition of Tutankhamun artifacts toured the world. Several museums reported unusual incidents during the exhibition's run: unexplained equipment failures, security system malfunctions, and a higher than normal rate of illness among staff and visitors. The San Francisco exhibition was temporarily closed after a security guard reported seeing a figure in ancient Egyptian dress walking among the display cases at night. Insurance companies, ever practical in their approach to risk, began including curse clauses in policies covering Egyptian artifacts. Lloyd's of London famously refused to insure certain objects without substantial premiums to cover supernatural contingencies. While ostensibly tongue-in-cheek, these policies reflected a genuine uncertainty about the potential for unexplained losses. The digital age has brought new tools to bear on curse investigation. Statistical analysis of death rates among archaeologists and museum workers has produced conflicting results, with some studies suggesting elevated mortality rates among those working with Egyptian materials, while others find no significant correlation. Electromagnetic field measurements in various tombs have detected unusual readings, though interpretations of their significance vary widely. Social media has amplified both believer and skeptic communities. Video footage allegedly showing supernatural phenomena in Egyptian sites circulates widely, though advances in digital manipulation make such evidence increasingly questionable. Online databases tracking reported curse incidents have grown to include thousands of entries, creating a vast archive of anecdotal evidence that defies easy analysis. Perhaps the most intriguing modern development is the application of quantum mechanical principles to curse theory. Some researchers suggest that consciousness itself might interact with quantum fields in ways that could influence probability and causation. If the ancient Egyptians somehow understood these principles, they might have created genuine quantum-level effects that persist across millennia. The shining pyramidion. At the apex of every ancient Egyptian pyramid, crowning its geometric perfection, once sat a small but crucial capstone known as a pyramidion. These gleaming apex stones, often covered in gold or electrum, caught the first rays of dawn and the last light of dusk, transforming the monumental tombs into beacons that could be seen for miles across the Nile Valley. Yet today, with rare exceptions, these crowning jewels of ancient architecture have vanished as completely as if they never existed. Their disappearance represents one of archaeology's most puzzling mysteries, a case of missing treasures that once defined the very identity of Egypt's most iconic monuments. The pyramidion was far more than mere decoration. In Egyptian cosmology, it represented the Benben stone, the primordial mound from which all creation emerged. According to myth, this was the first solid matter to rise from the waters of chaos at the beginning of time, the point where the sun god Ra first manifested his divine light. By crowning their pyramids with pyramidions, the pharaohs were not simply completing architectural projects, they were creating cosmic symbols, miniature representations of creation itself. The Great Pyramid of Giza, humanity's most famous monument, stands today with a truncated summit, its apex stone long gone. Historical accounts suggest that this pyramidion was made of electrum, a naturally occurring alloy of gold and silver that would have blazed like a star when touched by sunlight. Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BCE, described pyramids crowned with brilliant capstones that could blind those who stared at them directly. Medieval Arab historians spoke of pyramid tops that shone like mirrors, reflecting light across vast distances. But where did they go? The mystery begins with the simple fact that gold and precious metals have always been irresistibly valuable. Throughout Egypt's long history, periods of political instability and economic hardship made the gleaming pyramidions obvious targets for plunder. The precious metals could be melted down, their value converted into coins or jewellery that would fund armies, bribe officials, or simply provide wealth to whoever was bold enough to scale these monuments and claim their prizes. Yet the logistics of removing a pyramidion present their own puzzles. These capstones were not small objects. Some weighed several tons and were precisely fitted to their pyramid's summit. Removing them would have required sophisticated engineering, teams of skilled workers, and substantial equipment. This was not a task for casual tomb robbers or opportunistic thieves. The systematic removal of pyramidions suggests organised efforts, possibly sanctioned by authorities or carried out by groups with significant resources and technical expertise. Some pyramidions, however, have survived, offering tantalising clues about their lost siblings. The pyramidion of Amenemhat III, discovered at Dashur in 1900, is carved from black granite and bears intricate hieroglyphic inscriptions, praising the pharaoh and invoking the protection of the gods. Its survival raises questions. Why was this particular capstone spared when so many others were taken? Was it hidden, forgotten, or simply deemed less valuable because it lacked precious metal covering? The Red Pyramid at Dashur retains what may be its original pyramidion, though centuries of weathering have obscured any precious metal that might once have adorned it. This lonely survivor offers a glimpse of how these monuments once appeared, complete, perfect, crowned with geometric precision. Standing at its base and looking up at the intact capstone, one can imagine the full glory of the pyramid fields when every monument blazed with reflected sunlight. But the mystery extends beyond simple theft. Some researchers have proposed that the pyramidions were removed as part of deliberate religious or political campaigns. During periods when Egypt fell under foreign rule, conquering armies might have viewed the gleaming capstones as symbols of pharaonic power that needed to be destroyed or appropriated. The systematic nature of their disappearance across multiple pyramid sites suggests coordinated rather than random removal. Medieval Islamic sources provide intriguing but contradictory accounts of the pyramidions' fate. Some texts describe them being removed during the early Islamic period as part of campaigns against pagan symbols. Others suggest they were taken by crusaders or other foreign invaders who saw them as valuable spoils of war. A few accounts claim the pyramidions were deliberately removed by Egyptian authorities to prevent them from being used as landmarks by hostile armies approaching from the desert. More mysterious are the reports of pyramidions that seem to vanish overnight, with no recorded explanation for their disappearance. The Pyramid of Meidum, attributed to Pharaoh Huni, was described by 18th century travellers as retaining its capstone, yet by the 19th century it was gone. Local legends speak of the pyramidion being carried away by jinn or dissolved by magic, but these fantastical explanations only highlight the absence of credible historical records. Archaeological investigation has revealed evidence of the sophisticated methods used to secure pyramidions to their pyramids. The capstones were not simply placed on top of the monuments, they were precisely fitted into specially prepared slots, often secured with metal clamps or dowels. Some pyramidions show evidence of being deliberately damaged during removal, suggesting hasty or violent extraction rather than careful archaeological recovery. The search for missing pyramidions has led researchers to examine museum collections and private holdings around the world. Several objects identified as possible pyramidions have surfaced in European and American collections, acquired during the 18th and 19th centuries when Egyptian antiquities were freely collected by Western travellers. However, proving the authenticity and provenance of these objects remains challenging. Many suppose pyramidions turn out to be later copies or capstones from smaller monuments. One of the most intriguing discoveries occurred in 1982 when construction workers in Cairo uncovered what appeared to be a cache of precious metal objects, including several pointed stone artifacts that some experts identified as possible pyramidion fragments. The objects disappeared into private collections before they could be properly studied, leaving only photographs and sketchy descriptions. This incident highlights the ongoing challenge of illegal antiquities trafficking and the possibility that some pyramidions may survive in secret collections. Modern technology has opened new avenues for investigating the pyramidion mystery. Laser scanning and photogrammetry have revealed precise measurements of pyramid summits, allowing researchers to calculate the exact dimensions and shapes of the missing capstones. Computer modelling can now predict how pyramidions would have appeared and how they would have affected the monument's visual impact across the landscape. Satellite imagery has also provided unexpected insights. High-resolution images of pyramid sites sometimes reveal geometric anomalies or unusual reflections that might indicate the presence of buried pyramidion fragments. In 2019, thermal imaging detected what appeared to be metallic objects buried near several pyramid sites, though excavation has yet to confirm whether these represent lost capstones or other ancient artifacts. The question of the pyramidion's original appearance remains debated. While historical accounts consistently describe them as gleaming and metallic, the exact materials and decorative schemes varied. Some may have been solid gold, others merely gold-plated limestone or granite. Recent analysis of trace metals found on pyramid summits suggests that electrum was indeed commonly used, supporting ancient descriptions of capstones that combined the warm glow of gold with the cool brilliance of silver. Chemical analysis has also revealed evidence of more exotic materials. Microscopic fragments recovered from the summit of the bent pyramid contain traces of meteoric iron, suggesting that some pyramidions might have incorporated celestial materials. This finding aligns with Egyptian religious beliefs about the divine nature of metals that fell from the sky, though it raises new questions about how such rare materials were obtained and worked. The symbolic importance of the pyramidions extended beyond their material value. These capstones were often inscribed with the pharaohs' names and titles, along with religious texts designed to ensure the king's successful journey to the afterlife. The removal of pyramidions thus represented not just theft, but a form of spiritual vandalism that severed the connection between the earthly monument and its cosmic purpose. Some researchers have theorized that the pyramidions served practical as well as symbolic functions. Their reflective surfaces might have been used for signaling across the desert, creating a network of light-based communication between different sites. The precise geometric shapes could have served as astronomical markers, allowing priests to track the movement of celestial bodies and maintain accurate calendars. The mystery has inspired numerous treasure hunting expeditions, some sanctioned by authorities, others operating in the shadowy world of illegal antiquities recovery. Metal detector surveys around pyramid sites have occasionally turned up fragments of precious metals, though none have been definitively linked to pyramidions. The Egyptian government has increasingly restricted such activities, recognizing that amateur treasure hunting often destroys archaeological context even when it recovers valuable objects. International cooperation has become essential in tracking the fate of missing pyramidions. Interpol maintains databases of stolen antiquities that include descriptions of known pyramidions and suspected fragments. Museums worldwide have been asked to review their collections for objects that might represent lost capstones, though the legal and ethical issues surrounding repatriation remain complex. Recent discoveries have provided new hope for solving the pyramidion mystery. In 2020, excavations near the Pyramid of Userkaf revealed a chamber that appeared to have been used for storing pyramid construction materials. Among the artifacts recovered were several pointed stone objects that may represent unfinished or replacement pyramidions. While these objects lack the precious metal coverings of their famous counterparts, they provide valuable insights into the construction and design process. The digital age has enabled new forms of investigation and reconstruction. Virtual reality models now allow visitors to experience pyramids with their capstones restored, based on archaeological evidence and historical descriptions. These reconstructions have revealed how dramatically the pyramidions affected the monument's appearance, transforming them from truncated structures into perfect geometric forms that seem to pierce the sky. DNA analysis of organic materials found embedded in pyramid summits has provided unexpected insights into the pyramidions' fate. Microscopic wood fragments recovered from capstone anchor points contain pollen and other biological markers that suggest some pyramidions were removed during specific historical periods when particular plant species were prevalent in the region. The search continues in unexpected places. In 2018, ground-penetrating radar detected anomalous reflections in the desert near Giza, leading to speculation that pyramidions might have been buried rather than stolen. If confirmed, such discoveries could revolutionize our understanding of how these precious objects disappeared and whether any remain recoverable. Standing at the summit of the Great Pyramid today, something few are privileged to do, one can see the carefully prepared socket where the pyramidion once sat. The precision of the cutting, the careful angled surfaces designed to hold the capstone in perfect alignment, speak to the importance the ancient builders placed on this crowning element. The empty space seems to call out across the millennia, a geometric void that once blazed with divine light, the Dendera light. Deep within the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, 60 kilometers north of Luxor, lies one of ancient Egypt's most controversial and enigmatic mysteries. Carved into the sandstone walls of a small chamber beneath the temple complex, 3 remarkable reliefs depict what appear to be figures manipulating large, elongated objects that emit serpent-like forms emerging from bulbous ends. To most Egyptologists, these images represent mythological scenes involving lotus flowers and serpents. To others, they depict something far more extraordinary, evidence that the ancient Egyptians possessed electric lighting technology thousands of years before its supposed invention. The reliefs were carved during the Ptolemaic period, around the 1st century BCE, though they may copy far older designs. The chamber itself, known as the Crypt of Dendera, was sealed and forgotten for centuries until French archaeologist Auguste Mariette rediscovered it in 1857. What he found defied easy explanation. The images showed human figures, including what appear to be priests, carefully handling objects that modern eyes might interpret as enormous light bulbs or electrical devices. The central relief depicts a large, elongated oval object supported on a pillar-like base. From one end of this object emerges what Egyptologists identify as a serpent, but which proponents of alternative theories see as an electrical discharge or filament. Human figures stand nearby, appearing to operate or control the device. Most striking of all, the objects seem to be connected by what look remarkably like cables to a box-like structure that some interpret as a power source or electrical generator. The mystery deepened when researchers noticed the complete absence of soot on the chamber's ceiling. Throughout ancient Egypt, temples and tombs that were illuminated by oil lamps or torches show clear evidence of smoke damage, blackened ceilings and walls stained by centuries of burning. Yet the Dendera crypt, with its intricate carvings and delicate hieroglyphs, shows no such damage. How did the ancient artists work in such detail in what should have been a dark enclosed space? Traditional Egyptology offers a conventional explanation. The reliefs, according to orthodox interpretation, represent the mythological emergence of the lotus flower from the primordial waters, symbolizing rebirth and creation. The serpent emerging from the oval represents Harsomtus, a form of Horus associated with the rising sun. The human figures are priests participating in religious ceremonies. The cables are merely decorative elements or representations of the Milky Way. The absence of soot is explained by the use of polished metal mirrors to reflect sunlight into the chamber, a technique known to have been employed in other Egyptian temples. But the alternative interpretation refuses to be dismissed so easily. Engineers and electrical theorists examining the reliefs have noted remarkable similarities to modern electrical equipment. The oval objects resemble Crookes tubes or cathode ray tubes, devices used in early electrical experiments and television technology. The serpent-like forms emerging from them could represent electrical discharges or the glow of gases excited by electrical current. The supporting pillars resemble insulators, while the box-like objects might represent power sources or transformers. Proponents of the electrical theory point to other anomalies throughout Egyptian archaeology. The Great Pyramid's internal structure includes what appear to be electrical conduits, the narrow shafts leading from the king's and queen's chambers that seem to serve no obvious purpose related to burial or ventilation. Some researchers have suggested these shafts could have carried electrical cables, turning the entire pyramid into a massive power generation or transmission device. The Baghdad battery, discovered in Iraq and dating to approximately 250 BCE, provides tantalizing evidence that, ancient civilizations may have understood basic electrical principles. This ceramic jar contained a copper cylinder and an iron rod that, when filled with acidic liquid, could generate a small electrical current. If such simple batteries existed in ancient Mesopotamia, could more sophisticated electrical technology have been developed in Egypt? Chemical analysis of the Dendera chamber walls has yielded intriguing results. Spectrographic examination has detected traces of unusual mineral deposits that some researchers interpret as evidence of electrical activity. The stone itself shows microscopic alterations that could result from exposure to electrical fields over extended periods. Skeptics counter that these traces could result from natural geological processes or contamination from modern electrical equipment used during archaeological investigation. The debate intensified in the 1990s when Austrian electrical engineer Walter Gahn attempted to recreate the Dendera device based on his interpretation of the reliefs. Using traditional materials and techniques, he constructed what he believed was a working model of the ancient Egyptian light bulb. His device, consisting of a glass vessel partially filled with inert gas and equipped with electrodes, did indeed produce light when electricity was applied. While his experiment demonstrated that such a device was theoretically possible using ancient materials, critics argued that it proved nothing about what the ancient Egyptians actually possessed or intended. The question of power sources remains central to electrical theory. Even if the ancient Egyptians had developed primitive electric lighting, how would they have generated the electricity needed to operate such devices? Some researchers have proposed that the Egyptians had discovered ways to harness atmospheric electricity, or had developed more sophisticated battery technology than the simple Baghdad battery example suggests. Others have speculated about the use of electromagnetic induction or even theoretical connections to the Earth's natural electrical field. Geological surveys around Dendera have revealed interesting anomalies. The temple sits atop limestone formations that contain quartz crystals and other piezoelectric materials that can generate electrical charges under pressure. Underground water flows in the area could theoretically create the hydraulic pressure needed to activate such natural electrical generation. While purely speculative, these factors have fueled theories about how ancient peoples might have tapped into natural electrical phenomena. The hieroglyphic texts accompanying the Dendera reliefs provide their own mysteries. Written in late-period Egyptian, they include references to the first time and speak of knowledge preserved from much earlier eras. Some passages mention divine light that banishes darkness and serpents of fire that emerge from sacred objects. While Egyptologists interpret these as standard religious metaphors, alternative theorists see them as technical descriptions of electrical phenomena. Computer modelling has attempted to analyse the Dendera reliefs as if they were technical diagrams. When treated as engineering schematics, the proportions and relationships between elements in the carvings show remarkable consistency with known electrical devices. The cables maintain consistent diameters throughout their depicted length, and the connections between components follow logical patterns that would be expected in functional electrical circuits. Archaeological investigation has expanded beyond Dendera to search for similar images elsewhere in Egypt. Several temples contain reliefs that could potentially be interpreted as depicting electrical or technological devices, though none are as detailed or suggestive as those at Dendera. The Temple of Edfu contains images of objects that some researchers identify as electrical components, while certain tomb paintings show figures holding what might be primitive batteries or electrical cells. The cultural implications of ancient electrical technology would be staggering. If the Egyptians possessed electric lighting, it would revolutionize our understanding of how they accomplished their remarkable artistic and architectural achievements. The precise wall paintings deep within pyramids and tombs, the intricate carvings in dark chambers, the perfect astronomical alignments, all might have been made possible by artificial illumination rather than torches and mirrors. However, the absence of supporting evidence remains problematic for electrical theory. Despite extensive archaeological investigation, no actual electrical devices, conducting wires or power generation equipment have been found in Egyptian sites. The sophisticated metallurgy and glass-making techniques required for electrical components, while theoretically possible with ancient technology, show no clear evidence of having been developed for such purposes. Recent scientific analysis has employed increasingly sophisticated techniques to examine the Dendera mystery. Electromagnetic field measurements in the chamber have detected slight anomalies that could indicate residual electrical effects, though natural explanations remain possible. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed additional chambers beneath the temple that have yet to be fully explored, raising hopes that more definitive evidence might await discovery. The debate has been complicated by the involvement of fringe theorists who connect the Dendera reliefs to claims about ancient astronauts, lost civilizations, or suppressed technology. These associations have made serious academic consideration of the electrical theory more difficult, as researchers risk their professional reputations by investigating what many consider pseudoscientific claims. Nevertheless, some mainstream scientists have acknowledged that the mystery deserves continued investigation. The absence of soot in chambers where detailed work was clearly performed remains unexplained by conventional theories. The sophisticated understanding of optics, acoustics, and engineering demonstrated by ancient Egyptian architects suggests they may have possessed knowledge that current archaeology has yet to recognize. International collaboration has brought new perspectives to the Dendera investigation. Teams combining Egyptologists, electrical engineers, and materials scientists have approached the mystery from multiple angles. Their work has revealed the complexity of the question and the difficulty of proving or disproving the electrical theory based on available evidence. The mystery has inspired numerous experimental archaeology projects. Researchers have attempted to recreate ancient Egyptian working conditions using only torches and mirrors, documenting the challenges and limitations such methods would impose. While these experiments demonstrate that detailed work was possible using traditional lighting, they also highlight the advantages that artificial illumination would have provided. Modern electrical engineering has found inspiration in the Dendera reliefs. Regardless of their true meaning, the images have influenced research into more efficient lighting systems and alternative electrical devices. Some inventors have claimed that studying the ancient Egyptian representations has led to new insights about electrical phenomena and energy transmission. The digital age has enabled new forms of analysis and interpretation. Computer vision algorithms have been applied to the Dendera reliefs to identify patterns and relationships that might not be apparent to human observers. Three-dimensional modelling has allowed researchers to examine the carvings from multiple angles and to test various interpretational hypotheses about their meaning and function. Archaeological simulation software has modelled the temple complex as it would have appeared in ancient times, including sophisticated lighting analyses that examine how natural and artificial light would have behaved in different chambers. These studies have provided new insights into ancient Egyptian architectural principles and their relationship to lighting and visibility. The search for additional evidence continues in unexpected places. Chemical analysis of ancient Egyptian glass artifacts has revealed compositions that could theoretically support electrical applications. Metallurgical examination of bronze and copper objects has identified alloys and working techniques that might have been suitable for electrical components, though proving their actual use remains challenging. Standing in the Dendera crypt today, surrounded by the enigmatic reliefs that have sparked decades of controversy, one cannot help but be struck by their unusual character. Whether they represent religious symbolism or technical diagrams, they clearly depict something that the ancient Egyptians considered important enough to carve in permanent stone and conceal in a hidden chamber. The mystery of the Dendera light remains unresolved, suspended between ancient symbolism and modern technology, between religious interpretation and scientific possibility. It challenges our assumptions about the capabilities of ancient civilizations and reminds us that the past may hold surprises that our current knowledge cannot accommodate. The unfinished obelisk. In the ancient quarries of Aswan, where the desert sun beats down mercilessly on granite older than memory itself, lies one of archaeology's most haunting monuments to human ambition and divine intervention. Here, carved partially from the living rock but never completed, never raised, never crowned with gold, rests the unfinished obelisk, a colossal testament to the audacity of ancient Egyptian engineering and the mysterious forces that brought their greatest project to an abrupt and permanent halt. The obelisk stretches 42 meters in length, longer than any that has ever stood upright. If completed, it would have weighed over 1,100 tons, making it the largest single piece of stone ever quarried by human hands. Its creation was commissioned during the reign of Hatshepsut, the female pharaoh who ruled Egypt during the 15th century BCE, a time when the kingdom's power and artistic achievement had reached unprecedented heights. Yet this monument to her glory never left the quarry where it was born. The granite quarries of Aswan had supplied Egypt's most prestigious monuments for millennia. The red granite found here was prized above all other stones for its beauty, durability, and symbolic significance. The Egyptians called it the flesh of Ra, believing it embodied the sun god's divine essence. From these quarries came the obelisks that graced the temples of Karnak and Luxor, the sarcophagi of the pharaohs, and countless statues of gods and kings. But none of these achievements compared to the ambition behind the unfinished obelisk. The scale of the project defies comprehension. To create an obelisk of such massive proportions, the ancient quarrymen had to carve down into the granite bedrock, separating the monument from the earth itself, while leaving it still connected at its base. They worked with copper tools, wooden wedges, and dolerite pounders, technology that seems impossibly primitive for such a monumental undertaking. Yet for months, perhaps years, they laboured in the scorching heat, slowly and methodically freeing the obelisk from its granite matrix. Then suddenly work stopped, forever. The reason becomes apparent to any visitor who walks along the obelisk's partially carved length. Running through the granite are dark veins, flaws in the stone that would have made the completed monument structurally unsound. These cracks, invisible when work began but revealed as the carving progressed, doomed the project. The ancient engineers faced a devastating realization. After investing enormous time, effort, and resources, their masterpiece was fatally flawed. But the mystery extends far beyond simple structural failure. Why wasn't the stone examined more carefully before such massive effort was invested? The Egyptians were master stoneworkers with thousands of years of experience in quarrying granite. They understood the properties of stone better than perhaps any civilization before or since. How could they have failed to detect flaws that would have been visible with careful examination? Some researchers have proposed that the cracks developed during the quarrying process itself. The techniques used to separate the obelisk from the bedrock involved heating the granite with fires and then rapidly cooling it with water, causing the stone to contract and crack along desired lines. It's possible that this thermal stress created or exacerbated existing weaknesses in the granite, turning a viable project into a disaster. Others suggest that the ancient quarrymen knew about the flaws from the beginning but believed they could work around them. Perhaps they intended to use metal clamps or other reinforcements to strengthen the weak points, techniques that were known to Egyptian engineers. The decision to abandon the project might have come only when they realized that no amount of reinforcement could overcome the stone's fundamental weaknesses. The logistics of the obelisk project reveal the staggering ambition behind its creation. Moving a completed obelisk of this size would have required engineering techniques that challenge our understanding of ancient capabilities. The largest obelisks that were successfully erected weighed around 500 tons, already an extraordinary achievement. This monument would have been more than twice that weight, pushing ancient technology to its absolute limits. Recent analysis has revealed the sophisticated techniques the ancient quarrymen employed. The granite surface shows clear evidence of systematic carving patterns, with parallel grooves created by teams working in coordinated sections. Tool marks indicate the use of specialized equipment, including bronze chisels and iron tools that were rare and precious in the ancient world. The precision of the work suggests that the project was overseen by master craftsmen with intimate knowledge of stoneworking techniques. Archaeological investigation around the obelisk has uncovered evidence of a massive supporting infrastructure. The quarry shows signs of housing temporary workshops, tool-making facilities, and accommodation for hundreds of workers. Pottery shards and other artifacts suggest that a substantial community developed around the project, with specialized craftsmen, laborers, and support personnel all dedicated to bringing Hatshepsut's vision to reality. The abandonment of the obelisk had profound implications for ancient Egypt. The resources invested in the project represented a significant portion of the kingdom's wealth and technical expertise. The failure would have been seen not just as an engineering setback, but as a sign of divine displeasure, a message from the gods that the project was not meant to succeed. In a culture where pharaonic power was intimately connected to divine approval, such a failure carried enormous political and religious significance. Modern engineering analysis has confirmed that the ancient assessment was correct. The obelisk could never have stood safely. Computer modelling shows that the structural flaws would have made it impossible to transport, raise, or maintain the monument. The cracks would have propagated under stress, potentially causing catastrophic failure during any attempt to move or erect it. The ancient engineers' decision to abandon the project demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of structural mechanics, yet questions remain about the project's original feasibility. Some engineers have argued that the obelisk's proportions were fundamentally unsound, that its height-to-width ratio would have made it unstable even without the granite floors. This raises the possibility that the project was doomed from the conceptual stage, representing a triumph of ambition over practical engineering considerations. The mystery deepened in the 1970s when archaeologists discovered evidence of a second, even larger obelisk that had been planned for the same quarry. Survey marks and preliminary carving suggest that Hatshepsut's engineers intended to create a pair of massive monuments, each larger than any previously attempted. This discovery raised new questions about the scope of the project and the resources that ancient Egypt was willing to commit to monumental architecture. Geological surveys have revealed that the granite formation at Aswan contains numerous natural flaws and variations that would have made large-scale quarrying increasingly risky. The unfinished obelisk may represent the point where ancient technology reached its natural limits, where the ambition of the pharaohs finally exceeded the capabilities of stone and engineering technique. Recent technological advances have opened new avenues for investigating the obelisk mystery. Ground-penetrating radar has mapped the internal structure of the granite, revealing additional flaws and stress patterns that weren't visible to ancient quarrymen. Acoustic analysis has identified resonance patterns that suggest how the stone might have behaved under different stress conditions. Experimental archaeology has attempted to recreate ancient quarrying techniques using period-appropriate tools and methods. These experiments have demonstrated both the remarkable skill of ancient craftsmen and the inherent limitations of their technology. Working granite with copper tools and stone hammers is extraordinarily labour-intensive, requiring precise technique and enormous patience. The abandonment process itself provides insights into ancient Egyptian project management. Rather than attempting to salvage materials or modify the design, the workers simply stopped where they were and walked away. Tools were left where they fell, and the quarry was abandoned to the desert. This suggests that the decision to halt work came from the highest levels of authority and was considered final and irreversible. Climate analysis has revealed that the period when the obelisk was being carved coincided with unusual weather patterns in the region. Temperature fluctuations and changes in humidity might have affected the granite's properties, making it more susceptible to cracking during the quarrying process. These environmental factors could have contributed to the project's failure in ways that the ancient engineers couldn't have anticipated. The unfinished obelisk has become a touchstone for understanding ancient Egyptian engineering capabilities and limitations. It represents the high water mark of their ambitions in stoneworking, the point where confidence and capability met geological reality. The monument serves as a reminder that even the most advanced ancient civilizations operated within natural constraints that no amount of skill or determination could overcome. Archaeological evidence suggests that the failure of the unfinished obelisk led to changes in Egyptian quarrying practices. Subsequent projects showed more conservative proportions and more careful preliminary geological surveys. The disaster became a learning experience that influenced monument construction for generations. Modern conservation efforts have focused on protecting the obelisk from further deterioration. The granite surface shows evidence of weathering and human interference over the millennia. Tourist access has been carefully managed to prevent damage, while allowing visitors to witness this remarkable testament to ancient ambition. The site has also become a laboratory for understanding ancient construction techniques. The partially completed carving provides a unique window into Egyptian quarrying methods, revealing techniques and procedures that are invisible in completed monuments. Students of ancient technology can observe tool marks, work patterns, and construction sequences that were buried beneath finishing work in successful projects. Standing beside the unfinished obelisk today, dwarfed by its massive proportions and rough-carved surfaces, one cannot help but feel the weight of abandoned dreams. Here lies a monument that was meant to proclaim Hatshepsut's glory for eternity, to stand as tall as a modern skyscraper and visible for miles across the Nile Valley. Instead, it remains forever earthbound, its carved hieroglyphs speaking to no one but the desert wind. The Sphinx's eroded body. For over 4.5 millennia, the great Sphinx of Giza has gazed eastward across the desert sands, its enigmatic smile weathered by time, but its mystery only deepening with each passing century. This colossal monument, carved from a single outcrop of limestone, stands as one of humanity's most recognizable symbols. Yet beneath its familiar facade lies a puzzle that has confounded archaeologists, geologists, and historians for generations. The strange patterns of erosion that scar its ancient body tell a story that doesn't match the accepted timeline of Egyptian civilization. The Sphinx measures 73 meters in length and 20 meters in height, its human head seemingly disproportionately small compared to its massive lion's body. Traditional Egyptology dates its creation to around 2500 BCE, during the reign of Pharaoh Khafre of the 4th dynasty. This dating is based on stylistic analysis of the facial features, which appear to resemble Khafre, and the monument's proximity to his pyramid complex. According to orthodox interpretation, the Sphinx was carved during Egypt's Old Kingdom, when the great pyramid builders demonstrated their mastery over stone and scale. But the Sphinx's body tells a different story, one written in stone by wind, water, and time itself. The most striking feature of the Sphinx's weathering is not what one might expect from a monument sitting in one of the world's most arid environments. Instead of the gradual, uniform erosion typically caused by wind and sand, much of the Sphinx's body shows clear evidence of water erosion. Deep, undulating channels run vertically down its flanks, creating a pattern that geologists immediately recognize as the work of flowing water over extended periods. This observation has led to one of archaeology's most controversial theories. In the 1990s, geologist Robert Schoch of Boston University conducted a detailed study of the Sphinx's erosion patterns. His conclusion was startling. The degree and type of weathering he observed could only have been caused by substantial rainfall over thousands of years. Since the Giza Plateau has experienced an arid climate for the past 4,500 years, Schoch argued that the Sphinx must be far older than traditionally believed, possibly dating to a time when the region received significant precipitation. The implications of this theory are staggering. The last period when the Giza Plateau experienced heavy rainfall was during the African humid period, which ended around 10,000 years ago. If Schoch's analysis is correct, the Sphinx could predate the accepted beginning of Egyptian civilization by thousands of years, suggesting the existence of an advanced culture capable of monumental stone carving long before the rise of the pharaohs. The evidence for water erosion appears most dramatically in the Sphinx enclosure, the rectangular depression from which the monument was carved. The walls of this enclosure show clear signs of what geologists call precipitation-induced weathering. The limestone has been carved into smooth flowing channels and rounded profiles that are characteristic of water erosion rather than wind damage. These patterns are particularly pronounced on the western wall of the enclosure, which would have been most exposed to the prevailing direction of ancient rainfall. However, the water erosion theory has faced fierce resistance from mainstream Egyptology. Critics argue that underground water seepage, rather than surface rainfall, could account for the observed erosion patterns. They point to the complex hydrology of the Giza Plateau, where underground aquifers and seasonal flooding of the Nile could have created conditions for water damage without requiring a dramatically different climate. The debate has been further complicated by the discovery that different parts of the Sphinx show different types of weathering. While the body displays clear evidence of water erosion, the head appears to have been carved or recarved more recently, showing weathering patterns consistent with wind and sand abrasion typical of the current arid climate. This has led some researchers to propose that the Sphinx is a composite monument, an ancient lion body topped with a pharaonic head added during the Old Kingdom. Geological analysis has revealed additional mysteries in the Sphinx's construction. The limestone from which it was carved shows significant variations in hardness and composition. Some layers are relatively soft and easily eroded, while others are much harder and more resistant to weathering. This geological variability has created an uneven pattern of erosion that makes it difficult to interpret the monument's weathering history based on visual observation alone. Recent core sampling of the Sphinx's limestone has provided new insights into its geological composition and weathering patterns. The analysis revealed that the monument was carved from multiple geological layers, each with different properties and susceptibilities to erosion. Some of these layers date to different periods in geological time, suggesting that the limestone formation itself was more complex than previously understood. Chemical analysis of the erosion patterns has detected unusual mineral deposits within the weathered channels. These deposits include compounds that typically form in the presence of flowing water over extended periods. While not definitive proof of ancient rainfall, these findings support the hypothesis that water played a significant role in shaping the Sphinx's current appearance. The restoration history of the Sphinx adds another layer to the erosion mystery. The monument has been repaired and restored numerous times throughout its history, beginning as early as the New Kingdom period around 1400 BCE. Pharaoh Thutmose IV erected a stela between the Sphinx's paws, describing a dream in which the monument asked to be cleared of sand. This indicates that even in ancient times, the Sphinx was already suffering from deterioration and required maintenance. Modern restoration efforts have involved replacing significant portions of the monument's limestone with new stone blocks. These repairs make it difficult to distinguish original weathering patterns from more recent damage. Some of the most dramatic erosion visible today may actually be the result of poor quality restoration materials that have weathered more rapidly than the original limestone. Microclimate analysis around the Sphinx has revealed that local weather conditions can create unusual patterns of moisture and temperature variation. The monument's position in a depression below the general level of the plateau creates a microenvironment where humidity can accumulate and temperature fluctuations can be more extreme. These conditions could accelerate certain types of weathering without requiring major climatic changes. Advanced imaging techniques have provided new tools for analyzing the Sphinx's erosion patterns. Laser scanning has created detailed three-dimensional maps of the monument's surface, allowing researchers to measure weathering depths and patterns with unprecedented precision. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed internal structures and voids that may influence how water moves through the limestone. Comparative studies with other limestone monuments in Egypt have yielded mixed results. Some structures show similar weathering patterns to the Sphinx, while others display markedly different erosion characteristics despite being carved from similar limestone and exposed to the same climate. These variations suggest that local factors, geology, orientation, construction techniques, may play larger roles in weathering patterns than previously recognized. The search for definitive answers has led researchers to examine the broader archaeological context of the Giza Plateau. Recent discoveries of older structures and artifacts in the area have pushed back the timeline of human activity at the site. While none of these findings definitively proves that the Sphinx is older than traditionally believed, they suggest that the area had significance for ancient peoples over a much longer period than previously understood. Isotopic analysis of the Sphinx's limestone has attempted to determine when the monument was exposed to weathering processes. By measuring the ratios of certain isotopes that change predictably over time when exposed to atmospheric conditions, researchers hope to establish a timeline for the monument's creation. However, the complex restoration history and variable geological composition have made these measurements difficult to interpret. The erosion mystery has also encompassed the Sphinx Temple and Valley Temple, massive stone structures located near the monument. These buildings, constructed from blocks quarried from the Sphinx enclosure, show similar weathering patterns to the main monument. If the temples date to the Old Kingdom as traditionally believed, their erosion patterns should provide important clues about the timeline and causes of weathering at the site. Atmospheric modelling has attempted to reconstruct ancient climate conditions at Giza to determine whether sufficient rainfall occurred during historical periods to account for the observed erosion. These studies have confirmed that the region experienced much wetter conditions during prehistory, but have been unable to establish precise dates for climatic transitions that would resolve the dating controversy. The debate has extended beyond pure science into questions of archaeological methodology and cultural bias. Some researchers argue that mainstream Egyptology's resistance to reconsidering the Sphinx's age reflects institutional conservatism rather than scientific rigor. Others contend that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the water erosion theory has not met this standard of proof. International collaboration has brought new perspectives to the erosion puzzle. Geologists from different geological backgrounds and climate regions have examined the Sphinx, often reaching different conclusions about the significance of its weathering patterns. These diverse viewpoints have enriched the debate while also highlighting the complexity of interpreting geological evidence in archaeological contexts. The mystery has inspired numerous experimental studies attempting to replicate the observed erosion patterns under controlled conditions. Researchers have subjected limestone samples to various weathering agents, water, wind, sand, salt, to determine which conditions produce patterns most similar to those seen on the Sphinx. While these experiments have provided valuable insights into weathering processes, they have not resolved the fundamental questions about the monument's age and erosion history. Public interest in the Sphinx erosion mystery has remained intense, fueled by documentaries, books, and online discussions that often present the controversy in stark, opposing terms. This popular attention has both benefited and complicated scientific investigation, providing funding and public support for research, while also creating pressure for definitive answers that may not be scientifically justified. Standing before the Sphinx today, observing the deep channels and rounded contours carved into its flanks, one cannot help but be struck by the monument's obvious antiquity. Whether shaped by rainfall, groundwater, or other forces, the erosion patterns speak of vast stretches of time, of geological processes operating over scales that dwarf human history. The weathering has given the monument an organic, almost living quality, as if the limestone itself has grown into its current form. The erosion mystery embodies larger questions about how we understand the past and the relationship between different scientific disciplines. It challenges archaeology to engage more deeply with geological evidence while pushing geology to consider archaeological contexts. Most importantly, it reminds us that monuments like the Sphinx are not static objects frozen in time, but dynamic entities that continue to change and evolve. The Sphinx's eroded body will continue to weather regardless of how we interpret its patterns. Wind, sand, pollution, and human activity continue to reshape its surface, adding new layers to the palimpsest of erosion that has accumulated over millennia. Each day brings minute changes that alter the very evidence we seek to interpret. The mysterious death of Akhenaten, in the 17th year of his reign, as the shadows lengthened over his revolutionary capital of Amarna, the heretic pharaoh Akhenaten vanished from history as abruptly and mysteriously as his radical religious vision had emerged. The man who had transformed Egypt's spiritual landscape abolished the worship of ancient gods and moved the capital to a virgin site in the desert simply disappeared from the historical record, leaving behind only fragments, questions, and a kingdom in chaos. His death, if death it was, remains one of ancient Egypt's most enduring mysteries, a puzzle wrapped in political intrigue, religious revolution, and the inexorable forces that would soon erase his very name from official memory. Akhenaten had ascended to the throne as Amenhotep IV around 1353 BCE, inheriting an empire at the height of its power and prosperity. But within a few years he had orchestrated one of history's most dramatic religious revolutions, abandoning the traditional pantheon of Egyptian gods in favour of a single deity, the Aten, represented as a solar disk whose rays ended in hands offering life to the royal family. He changed his name from Amenhotep, which honoured the god Amun, to Akhenaten, meaning effective for the Aten, and moved Egypt's capital from the ancient city of Thebes to a new site he called Akhetaten, horizon of the Aten, known today as Amarna. For more than a decade, Akhenaten ruled from his desert capital alongside his queen, the beautiful Nefertiti, their 6 daughters serving as symbols of divine favour. The art of the period depicts a close-knit royal family basking in the life-giving rays of their god, a radical departure from the formal distant representations of previous pharaohs. But beneath this domestic harmony, Egypt was beginning to fracture. The traditional priesthoods had been dispossessed, the empire's foreign territories were in revolt, and economic difficulties were mounting. Then, sometime around the 17th year of his reign, Akhenaten simply vanished. The last certain evidence of the pharaoh dates to year 17 of his reign, recorded on wine jar labels found at Amarna. After that, the historical record becomes fragmentary and confusing. No account of his death survives. No royal tomb inscription commemorates his passing. No succession narrative explains the transition to his successor. The man who had dominated Egypt for nearly 2 decades disappeared as if he had never existed. The absence of clear documentation has spawned numerous theories about Akhenaten's fate. The most conventional explanation suggests he died of natural causes, perhaps illness or disease, and was buried in the royal tomb he had prepared for himself, in the cliffs east of Amarna. However, When archaeologists finally located and explored this tomb in the early 20th century, they found it damaged and plundered, with no trace of the pharaoh's mummy or burial goods. More dramatic theories propose that Akhenaten met a violent end. The religious revolution he had imposed was deeply unpopular with many powerful factions in Egyptian society. The priests of Amun, whose temples he had closed and whose wealth he had confiscated, had every reason to seek his destruction. Military commanders, frustrated by Egypt's declining international position, might have seen him as a threat to national security. Even members of his own court may have concluded that the radical experiment had gone too far. The political situation in Akhenaten's final years provides ample motivation for conspiracy. Egypt's vassal states in the Levant were falling to Hittite expansion, while the pharaoh remained focused on his religious reforms rather than military intervention. Diplomatic correspondence known as the Amarna letters reveals a growing chorus of desperate pleas from Egyptian governors and allied rulers, begging for military support that never came. The empire that had dominated the ancient Near East for centuries was crumbling while its king contemplated theology. Archaeological evidence from Amarna itself suggests that the city's final years were marked by decline and abandonment. Construction projects were left unfinished. The royal workshops scaled back production, and many officials began quietly preparing for the inevitable restoration of the old order. In this atmosphere of decay and uncertainty, the pharaoh's sudden disappearance takes on ominous overtones. The mystery deepened with the discovery that Akhenaten's death was followed by a confusing succession period that lasted several years. A shadowy figure named Smenkhkare appears briefly in the records, possibly ruling as co-regent or successor, but his identity and fate are equally mysterious. Some scholars identify Smenkhkare with Nefertiti, suggesting the queen assumed pharaonic powers as her husband's health declined. Others propose he was a son or brother of Akhenaten, ruling briefly before dying young. The analysis of royal mummies has added new dimensions to the mystery, while raising additional questions. In 1907, archaeologists discovered a badly damaged mummy in tomb KV 55 in the Valley of the Kings. The body was that of a young man, probably in his 20s, buried with royal grave goods but showing signs of deliberate vandalism. The face had been destroyed and royal cartouches had been hacked away. Some experts have identified this mummy as Akhenaten, though others argue the age doesn't match historical records that suggest the pharaoh ruled for 17 years after reaching adulthood. Recent DNA analysis has complicated the identification further. Studies of royal mummies from the Amarna period have revealed complex family relationships that don't always match traditional historical reconstructions. The KV-55 mummy has been identified as the father of Tutankhamun, which would make him Akhenaten if traditional genealogies are correct. However, the physical evidence suggests an age at death that seems too young for a pharaoh who ruled for nearly 2 decades. The condition of the KV-55 mummy has sparked theories about the circumstances of its burial and reburial. The damage to the face and cartouches suggests deliberate desecration, possibly carried out during the systematic erasure of Akhenaten's memory that followed his disappearance. The location of the burial in the Valley of the Kings, rather than at Amarna, indicates that the body was moved at least once, possibly during the restoration of the traditional capital at Thebes. Chemical analysis of materials found with the KV-55 mummy has revealed traces of unusual substances that might indicate poisoning or other unnatural causes of death. However, these findings remain controversial, as the materials could have been introduced during the mummification process or subsequent handling of the remains. The poor preservation of the body has made definitive forensic analysis extremely difficult. The systematic destruction of Akhenaten's monuments and records that began shortly after his disappearance suggests that his enemies wanted to erase not just his memory, but any evidence of how he died. Later pharaohs, particularly Horemheb, ordered the dismantling of Amarna and the destruction of Akhenaten's temples and statues. Blocks from these monuments were used as fill material in later construction projects, literally burying the heretic king's legacy beneath new buildings. This deliberate erasure has made reconstructing the events of Akhenaten's final years extraordinarily difficult. Most of what we know comes from fragmentary inscriptions, scattered artifacts, and diplomatic correspondence that was abandoned when Amarna was evacuated. The absence of official Egyptian records from this period is so complete that it appears intentional, suggesting a coordinated effort to remove Akhenaten from history. International correspondence from the period provides glimpses of the deteriorating situation in Egypt's final years under Akhenaten. The Hittite king Suppiluliuma first refers to the death of an Egyptian pharaoh and subsequent political instability, but the references are indirect and don't clearly identify Akhenaten. Babylonian and Assyrian sources mention disruptions in Egyptian diplomacy, but again without specific details about the pharaoh's fate. The role of the military in Akhenaten's disappearance remains a subject of speculation. General Horemheb, who would eventually become pharaoh himself, was positioned to play a crucial role in any transition of power. His later systematic destruction of Akhenaten's legacy suggests deep hostility to the religious revolution, but whether this extended to direct involvement in the pharaoh's death remains unclear. The possibility that Akhenaten survived his apparent death and continued to rule under another name has been proposed by some researchers. The mysterious pharaoh Neferneferuaten, who appears in records from the final years of the Amarna period, might have been Akhenaten himself, ruling under a different throne name as political circumstances changed. This theory would explain the abrupt disappearance from records while accounting for evidence of continued royal activity at Amarna. Medical analysis of artistic representations from Akhenaten's reign has suggested that the pharaoh may have suffered from various health conditions that could have contributed to his death. The distinctive artistic style of the Amarna period depicts the royal family with unusual physical characteristics, elongated skulls, feminine features, and unusual body proportions. While some scholars interpret these as artistic conventions, others have suggested they reflect actual medical conditions such as Marfan syndrome or other genetic disorders that might have affected Akhenaten's health and longevity. The discovery of additional royal burials from the Amarna period has provided new evidence while raising fresh questions. Several mummies of royal women from this era show signs of violent death, including head trauma and other injuries that suggest political violence. While none of these has been definitively identified as associated with Akhenaten's death, they indicate that the end of the Amarna period was marked by considerable turmoil and possibly systematic elimination of the royal family. Recent excavations at Amarna have uncovered evidence of hasty abandonment and destruction in some areas of the city. Buildings show signs of deliberate demolition, valuable objects were left behind, and some structures appear to have been burned. This archaeological evidence supports theories that Akhenaten's reign ended in violence and chaos rather than peaceful transition. The question of Akhenaten's ultimate burial place continues to generate controversy and exploration. While his original tomb at Amarna was clearly prepared for his burial, the evidence suggests it was never properly used or was later violated. Alternative theories propose that he was buried elsewhere, either in a secret location or in a tomb that has yet to be discovered. Some researchers have suggested that additional chambers in the Valley of the Kings might contain his undisturbed burial. Modern forensic techniques have been applied to the limited physical evidence available, including attempts to reconstruct the facial features of the KV-55 mummy and compare them with artistic representations of Akhenaten. However, the damage to the mummy and the stylistic conventions of Amarna art make such comparisons extremely difficult and often inconclusive. The political implications of how Akhenaten died would have been enormous for ancient Egypt. If he was murdered, it would represent one of history's earliest recorded political assassinations, demonstrating that even pharaohs claiming divine authority were vulnerable to earthly enemies. If he died naturally, the failure to record and commemorate his death properly suggests a level of political chaos that undermines the image of pharaonic stability. Standing in the ruins of Amarna today, where the heretic pharaoh once ruled over his revolutionary kingdom, one can almost feel the weight of unanswered questions. The city that was built to last forever was abandoned within decades of its founder's disappearance, its temples dismantled, its palaces left to the desert wind. The very completeness of its destruction speaks to the determination of Akhenaten's enemies to erase his memory and legacy. The star shafts of the Great Pyramid. Deep within the heart of the Great Pyramid of Giza, 4 narrow passages pierce through millions of tons of limestone with surgical precision, threading their way from the king's and queen's chambers toward the monument's outer faces. These enigmatic conduits, known as the star shafts, measure barely 20 centimeters square, yet represent some of the most sophisticated engineering achievements in human history. For over a century, archaeologists, astronomers and engineers have puzzled over their purpose, their precise construction, and their apparent alignment with specific stars in the ancient sky. These mysterious passages embody the intersection of Egyptian spirituality, advanced mathematics, and astronomical knowledge that continues to challenge our understanding of ancient capabilities. The existence of the star shafts was first documented in 1837 when British explorer Colonel Howard Vyse investigated the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid. Using gunpowder to blast through the chamber's walls, his team discovered the openings of two narrow passages that appeared to lead toward the pyramid's exterior faces. The southern shaft emerged on the pyramid's southern face, while the northern shaft terminated somewhere within the monument's structure, its exit point remaining a mystery that would perplex researchers for generations. The discovery of additional shafts in the Queen's Chamber came much later, in 1872, when engineer Wayman Dixon noticed hairline cracks in the chamber's walls that suggested the presence of hidden passages. When these walls were broken through, two more shafts were revealed. Though unlike those in the King's Chamber, these passages did not appear to reach the pyramid's exterior. The Queen's Chamber shafts seemed to stop somewhere within the monument's mass, their ultimate destinations unknown. What made these passages truly extraordinary was not just their existence, but their incredible precision. Each shaft maintains its small, rectangular cross-section with remarkable accuracy across its entire length, deviating by mere millimeters from perfect straightness, despite travelling through dozens of meters of solid limestone. The angles of ascent are precisely calculated. The King's Chamber shafts rise at approximately 45 and 39 degrees, while the Queen's Chamber shafts climb at about 39 and 37 degrees. This level of accuracy would be challenging to achieve, even with modern surveying equipment. In the 1960s, Egyptologist Alexander Badawi and astronomer Virginia Trimble made a discovery that revolutionized understanding of the shaft's purpose. Through careful calculations of ancient star positions, they determined that the passages were aligned with specific stars that held profound religious significance for the ancient Egyptians. The southern shaft from the King's Chamber pointed directly toward Orion's belt, the constellation the Egyptians identified with Osiris, lord of the afterlife. The northern shaft aligned with Alpha Draconis, the pole star of the Pyramid Age, representing the imperishable stars that never set. This astronomical alignment suggested that the shafts served as symbolic pathways for the pharaoh's soul to reach specific stellar destinations. According to Egyptian religious beliefs, the king's spirit needed to join the gods in the sky after death, becoming one with the cosmic order that governed both earthly and celestial realms. The star shafts appeared to provide precisely oriented conduits for this spiritual journey, connecting the burial chamber with the eternal stars. The precision required to achieve these alignments is staggering. The ancient engineers had to account not only for the exact positions of target stars, but also for the complex three-dimensional geometry of threading narrow passages through the pyramid's internal structure, while avoiding other chambers, corridors, and architectural features. The mathematical calculations involved would have required sophisticated knowledge of astronomy, trigonometry, and surveying techniques. Modern investigation has revealed additional layers of complexity in the shaft's design. In 1993, German engineer Rudolf Gantenbrink sent a small robot called Upjuaut-2 through the Queen's Chamber's southern shaft, making the first exploration of its complete length. After travelling 65 meters, the robot encountered a limestone door with copper handles, blocking further progress. This discovery suggested that the shafts were not simple passages but complex systems with deliberate barriers and hidden chambers. The copper handles discovered by Gantenbrink's robot sparked intense speculation about the shaft's true purpose. Why would astronomical alignment passages need doors? What lay beyond these barriers? The handles themselves appeared to be made of high-quality copper, an expensive material that suggested the importance of whatever they protected. The door's existence implied that the shafts served functions beyond mere symbolic alignment. They might have contained actual objects or chambers with specific purposes. In 2002, a live television expedition used a more advanced robot to drill through the door discovered by Gantenbrink. The camera revealed another chamber beyond, but before exploration could continue, the robot encountered yet another door, this one without visible handles. The pyramids seem to be playing an elaborate game of mechanical puzzles, with each discovery leading to new mysteries rather than answers. The engineering challenges of constructing the star shafts become even more impressive when considered in the context of the pyramid's overall construction. The passages had to be carved as the pyramid was built, requiring the ancient engineers to maintain perfect alignment and precise dimensions while millions of tons of stone blocks were being positioned around them. Any miscalculation would have resulted in passages that missed their targets or became blocked by subsequent construction. Recent analysis has revealed that the shaft's internal surfaces show evidence of sophisticated construction techniques. The walls are remarkably smooth, with finishing work that suggests the use of specialized tools and methods. Some sections show parallel grooves that might indicate the use of cutting devices unknown from other Egyptian contexts. The corners are sharp and precise, maintaining their rectangular cross-sections with tolerances that approach modern manufacturing standards. Computer modelling of the pyramid's internal structure has shown that the star shafts follow the most efficient possible paths to their targets. Despite the complex three-dimensional challenges involved, the ancient engineers chose routes that minimized the amount of stone that needed to be removed while maintaining structural integrity. This optimization suggests sophisticated planning and possibly mathematical modelling techniques that were far in advance of their time. The question of ventilation has long been debated in connection with the star shafts. Some researchers have suggested that the passages served practical purposes, providing air circulation for workers during construction or maintaining appropriate atmospheric conditions in the burial chambers. However, the precise astronomical alignments and the presence of doors argue against purely functional explanations. Ventilation shafts would not need to target specific stars or include elaborate sealing mechanisms. Chemical analysis of air samples from the shafts has yielded intriguing results. The atmosphere within the passages shows unusual isotopic compositions that might indicate they were sealed for extended periods or contained substances that affected their chemical makeup. While these findings don't definitively explain the shaft's purpose, they suggest that the passages maintained distinctive internal environments. The discovery that only 2 of the 4 shafts actually reached the pyramid's exterior has added another layer to the mystery. The king's chamber shafts both emerge on the pyramid's faces, allowing potential air circulation or access. However, the queen's chamber shafts terminate within the monument's structure, ending in sealed chambers or barriers. This difference suggests that the passages might have served different purposes or were completed according to different design specifications. Acoustic analysis of the star shafts has revealed unusual sound properties. The narrow passages act as resonating chambers, amplifying certain frequencies while dampening others. Some researchers have suggested that these acoustic properties were intentional, designed to enhance ritual activities or create specific sound effects during religious ceremonies. The precise geometry of the shafts would create predictable acoustic characteristics that could have been calculated by ancient engineers. The relationship between the star shafts and the pyramid's overall astronomical orientation has become a subject of intensive study. The monument itself is aligned to cardinal directions with extraordinary precision, and the shafts extend this astronomical awareness into 3-dimensional space. The complete system represents one of the most sophisticated examples of astronomical architecture in the ancient world. Recent discoveries using muon tomography have suggested the presence of additional voids near some of the star shafts. These potential chambers could represent previously unknown features of the shaft system, possibly containing objects or inscriptions that would illuminate their purpose. However, the precise nature and accessibility of these voids remain subjects of ongoing investigation. The construction sequence of the star shafts presents its own puzzles. Archaeological analysis suggests that different passages were built at different times during the pyramid's construction, possibly reflecting changing design requirements or evolving religious concepts. The queen's chamber shafts appear to have been sealed after initial construction, while the king's chamber passages remained open to the exterior. International collaboration has brought together astronomers, archaeologists, and engineers to study the star shafts from multiple perspectives. Computer simulations have modelled ancient star positions with increasing accuracy, confirming the precision of the alignments while revealing subtle variations that might indicate the specific dates when the alignments were calculated. The mystery has been complicated by the discovery that the stellar alignments were not permanent. Due to precession, the slow wobble of Earth's axis, the positions of stars change over millennia. The star shafts were aligned with their target stars only during specific periods, suggesting that their construction was timed to coincide with optimal celestial configurations. Modern engineering analysis has attempted to reverse engineer the construction techniques used to create the star shafts. Experiments with period-appropriate tools and methods have demonstrated the extraordinary skill required to maintain such precise alignments and dimensions across the passage's entire lengths. These studies have revealed that the ancient engineers possessed mathematical and surveying capabilities that were far more advanced than previously recognized. The symbolic significance of the star alignments has been examined through the lens of Egyptian religious texts and astronomical traditions. The pyramid texts, the oldest known religious writings, speak extensively of the pharaoh's stellar destiny and the specific stars that would receive his spirit. The star shafts appear to represent the physical implementation of these spiritual concepts, creating actual pathways to the cosmic destinations described in religious literature. Standing within the king's chamber today, one can look up at the entrances to the star shafts and contemplate the extraordinary vision that created them. These narrow openings, barely visible in the chamber's walls, represent connections to infinity, precisely engineered conduits that link the tomb's confined space with the eternal stars. The mathematical precision and astronomical knowledge required to create these passages speaks to intellectual achievements that rival any in human history. The lost army of Cambyses. In the 6th century BCE, as the Persian Empire reached the zenith of its power under Cyrus the Great and his successors, few forces on earth could challenge the might of the Persian military machine. Their armies had conquered Babylon, subjugated the Lydians, and brought the Greek city-states to their knees. But in the scorching vastness of the Egyptian desert, the Persians would encounter an enemy more merciless than any human foe, the desert itself. Here, in 524 BCE, an entire army of 50,000 Persian soldiers under the command of King Cambyses II would march into the western desert and vanish without a trace, becoming one of history's most enduring military mysteries. The story begins with Cambyses II, son of Cyrus the Great, who had successfully conquered Egypt in 525 BCE, adding the land of the pharaohs to the ever-expanding Persian Empire. But conquest was not enough for the ambitious king. His attention turned westward, toward the Oracle of Ammon at the Siwa Oasis, a sacred site that rivaled Delphi in its influence across the ancient world. The oracle, dedicated to the Egyptian god Ammon, who the Greeks identified with Zeus, had become a symbol of Egyptian religious authority that Cambyses viewed as a threat to Persian dominance. According to the Greek historian Herodotus, writing a century later, Cambyses decided to strike at the heart of Egyptian religious power by destroying the oracle and subjugating its priests. To accomplish this audacious plan, he assembled a massive expeditionary force, 50,000 seasoned warriors, the cream of the Persian military. These were not raw recruits, but battle-hardened veterans who had conquered nations and toppled empires. They were equipped with the finest weapons and armour the Persian Empire could provide, supported by supply trains and guided by local knowledge. The army departed from Thebes, modern-day Luxor, following ancient caravan routes that had connected the Nile Valley with the western oases for millennia. The distance to Siwa was roughly 800 kilometers across some of the most challenging terrain on Earth, an ocean of sand dunes, rocky plateaus and salt flats where temperatures could soar to lethal levels during the day and plummet at night. Yet Persian confidence was high. Their empire stretched from India to the Mediterranean. Surely a desert could not defeat the heirs of Cyrus the Great. For the first 7 days, the army made good progress. They reached the oasis of Karga, known to the ancients as the Great Oasis, where they rested, resupplied and prepared for the final push towards Siwa. Local witnesses saw the vast column of soldiers, horses and supply camels as they departed Karga, their bronze weapons glinting in the desert sun, their standards flying proudly in the arid wind. It was the last time the army would be seen alive. Days passed, then weeks, then months. No word came from the expedition. No messenger returned with news of victory or defeat. No survivors straggled back to Egyptian outposts with tales of disaster. The army had simply vanished as completely as if the desert had opened up and swallowed them whole. When search parties were finally sent out, they found nothing. No bodies, no equipment, no trace of what had befallen 50,000 men and their animals. Herodotus, gathering accounts from Egyptian sources decades later, recorded what he believed had happened. According to local testimony, the army had been caught in a massive sandstorm while encamped during their midday rest. The storm, of unprecedented ferocity, had buried the entire force under mountains of sand, entombing them so completely that no trace remained visible on the surface. It was, the Egyptians claimed, the judgment of their gods upon those who would dare attack their sacred oracle. But was Herodotus's account accurate? The Greek historian, writing with a Greek audience in mind, had never visited the Western Desert himself. His sources were Egyptian priests and storytellers who may have had their own reasons for shaping the narrative. The complete disappearance of such a large force seemed almost too convenient, too perfectly suited to Egyptian claims of divine protection. Some scholars have wondered whether the Lost Army was more legend than history, a tale that grew in the telling until it became accepted fact. Yet the story persisted with remarkable consistency across different sources and cultures. Persian records, though fragmentary, mention the expedition and its failure to return. Egyptian texts reference the event as a demonstration of divine power. Even later Roman historians accepted the account as credible, suggesting that the story had a foundation in historical fact rather than mere folklore. The logistical challenges facing Cambyses' army would have been enormous even under ideal conditions. Moving 50,000 soldiers across 800 kilometers of desert required careful planning, massive amounts of water and food, and intimate knowledge of the terrain. The Persian army would have needed thousands of pack animals, local guides familiar with the route, and established supply caches along the way. Any disruption to this delicate system could have resulted in catastrophe. Water above all would have been the critical factor. An army of this size would have required hundreds of thousands of litres of water per day, even on short rations. The distance between reliable water sources in the Western Desert often exceeds the carrying capacity of pack animals, creating deadly gaps that could only be crossed with perfect timing and planning. A single miscalculation, a blocked well, or an unexpected delay could have doomed the entire expedition. Modern desert warfare has demonstrated how quickly military situations can deteriorate in arid environments. Equipment fails in the extreme heat, men become disoriented and lost, and what seems like minor navigation errors can lead forces hundreds of kilometers off course. The Persian army, despite its experience in various terrains, may have been unprepared for the specific challenges of the Egyptian desert. Archaeological expeditions in the 20th and 21st centuries have searched extensively for traces of the Lost Army, employing increasingly sophisticated technology in their quest. In the 1930s, Hungarian explorer Laszlo Almasi, the inspiration for the main character in The English Patient, discovered ancient Persian artifacts in the Western Desert, including weapons and coins that might have belonged to Cambyses' expedition. However, these finds were scattered and inconclusive, raising as many questions as they answered. More recent expeditions have used satellite imagery, ground-penetrating radar, and metal detectors to scan vast areas of the desert for signs of the Lost Army. In 2009, Italian archaeologists Angelo and Alfredo Castiglione announced the discovery of what they believed were weapons and human remains from the Persian expedition near the Siwa oasis. Their finds included bronze arrowheads, daggers, and what appeared to be skeletal remains buried in the sand. However, the dating and identification of these artifacts remained subjects of scholarly debate. The challenge of locating archaeological evidence in the Western Desert cannot be overstated. The constantly shifting sands have been rearranging the landscape for over 2 millennia, burying and uncovering artifacts in an endless cycle. What lies exposed today may be buried tomorrow, while objects buried for centuries can suddenly appear on the surface after a sandstorm. The desert is a dynamic environment that actively conceals its secrets. Geological studies of the region have revealed the devastating power of desert sandstorms and their potential to bury large objects completely. Modern meteorological records document storms that can move millions of tons of sand in a matter of hours, creating new dunes and obliterating existing landmarks. A particularly severe storm could indeed have buried an entire army, especially if they were caught in a depression or valley where sand would naturally accumulate. Climate reconstructions for the 6th century BCE suggest that the Western Desert was, if anything, even more arid than it is today. The Persian army would have been operating at the limits of human endurance in an environment where any additional stress, extreme weather, equipment failure, or navigation errors could have triggered a cascade of disasters leading to total annihilation. The psychological aspects of desert warfare add another dimension to the mystery. The vast emptiness of the desert can induce disorientation and panic even in experienced soldiers. Men become separated from their units, water supplies are hoarded or wasted, and command structures break down under the stress of survival. The Persian army may have disintegrated not through a single catastrophic event, but through a gradual collapse of morale and discipline as their situation became increasingly desperate. Alternative theories have proposed that the army never intended to reach Siwa at all. Some historians suggest that Cambyses' expedition was actually a strategic withdrawal, moving Persian forces away from potential rebellions in Egypt while publicly maintaining the fiction of an active campaign. Under this interpretation, the lost army may have been deliberately dispersed or reassigned to other duties, with the story of their destruction serving as convenient propaganda. Others have theorized that the army was defeated not by natural forces but by human enemies. Bedouin tribes, familiar with desert survival and warfare, might have harassed the Persian column, cutting off supplies and picking off stragglers until the expedition collapsed. Local Egyptian forces, possibly with help from Libyan allies, could have orchestrated a campaign of attrition that gradually destroyed the Persian army without leaving obvious evidence of a major battle. The absence of Persian records detailing the expedition's fate has fueled speculation about cover-ups and political manipulation. Cambyses too was not a popular ruler, even among his own people, and the loss of an entire army would have been a devastating blow to his credibility. Persian court historians might have deliberately obscured or minimized the disaster, leaving later historians to piece together the story from fragmentary and possibly unreliable sources. Recent archaeological discoveries have provided new context for understanding ancient Persian military operations in Egypt. Excavations at Persian period sites have revealed evidence of extensive logistical preparations for desert campaigns, including specialized equipment and supply systems designed for arid environments. These findings suggest that the Persians were aware of the challenges they faced and had attempted to prepare accordingly. DNA analysis of human remains found in the Western Desert has occasionally yielded intriguing results. Some skeletal material shows genetic markers consistent with ancient Persian populations, though the dating and archaeological context of these finds remain uncertain. The harsh desert environment preserves organic material poorly, making definitive identification extremely difficult. Satellite archaeology has revolutionized the search for the lost army by allowing researchers to scan vast areas of desert that would be impossible to explore on foot. High-resolution imagery has revealed numerous anomalies, unusual formations, colour variations, and geometric patterns that might indicate buried structures or mass graves. However, investigating these anomalies on the ground often yields disappointing results, as natural geological processes can create patterns that mimic human activity. The legend of the Lost Army has become deeply embedded in local folklore throughout the Western Desert. Bedouin guides tell stories of ghostly warriors seen in sandstorms, of ancient weapons that surface after particularly fierce winds, and of places where the sand never quite covers the bones beneath. While these tales cannot be taken as historical evidence, they suggest that the memory of some catastrophic event has persisted in oral tradition across the centuries. Modern military analysis of the expedition has highlighted the extreme difficulty of the operation Cambyses attempted. Moving large forces across hostile desert terrain remains one of the most challenging military operations even with contemporary technology, vehicles, and communication systems. The Persian army, relying on animal transport and primitive navigation methods, was attempting something that would be considered extraordinarily risky by modern standards. The mystery has attracted treasure hunters and amateur archaeologists for decades, though their activities have often damaged potential archaeological sites and scattered evidence that might have provided clues about the army's fate. Professional excavations must now compete with decades of uncontrolled digging and metal detecting that may have destroyed crucial evidence. The humming statue, colossi of Memnon. Dawn breaks over the Valley of the Kings. The Nile flows silently eastward, carrying with it the whispers of millennia. On the western bank, where the ancient Egyptians believed the dead began their journey into eternity, two colossal figures emerge from the morning mist. They have stood here for over 3,000 years, silent, weathered, eternal, yet for centuries they were anything but silent. These are the colossi of Memnon. Carved from massive blocks of quartzite sandstone, each statue towers nearly 60 feet above the desert floor. They depict Amenhotep III, the magnificent pharaoh who ruled Egypt at the height of its power in the 14th century BCE. Originally, they flanked the entrance to his mortuary temple, a sprawling complex that once rivaled Karnak itself. Today, only scattered stones mark where that temple stood. But the colossi endure, keeping their eternal vigil. It was the northern statue that held the world spellbound. Each morning, as the first rays of sunlight struck its weathered surface, something extraordinary would occur. A sound would emerge from the stone, haunting, melodic, otherworldly. Ancient witnesses described it as a song, a cry, a divine greeting to the dawn. Some said it resembled the plucking of a harp-string. Others compared it to the mournful call of a bird. The Greeks, who encountered the statues during their conquest of Egypt, gave the phenomenon its enduring name. They identified the singing colossus with Memnon, the legendary Ethiopian king who fought at Troy and was slain by Achilles. According to myth, Memnon's mother was Eos, goddess of the dawn. Each morning she would weep for her fallen son, and in response his spirit would cry out in recognition. A daily reunion between mother and child played out in stone and sound. Roman emperors made pilgrimages to hear the statue sing. Hadrian visited in 130 CE, waiting 3 days before the statue finally performed for him. His wife Sabina carved her name into the base, adding to the hundreds of inscriptions left by awestruck visitors. The poet Juvenal wrote of the phenomenon with wonder. Strabo, the great geographer, documented it with scientific precision, noting that the sound occurred most reliably at sunrise. But what caused this mysterious song? Ancient explanations were supernatural. The statue was inhabited by the spirit of Memnon, responding to his mother's daily tears. The sound was divine communication, a bridge between the mortal world and the realm of the gods. Some believed it was an oracle, delivering prophecies in its cryptic music. Modern theories are more prosaic, yet no less fascinating. The leading explanation involves thermal expansion. As the cool desert air gave way to the warming rays of dawn, the statue's stone would expand unevenly. Cracks within the structure, possibly created by an earthquake in 27 BCE, would shift and vibrate, producing the ethereal sound. The quartzite itself, with its unique crystalline structure, may have acted as a resonator, amplifying these minute vibrations into audible music. Yet this theory, logical as it seems, has never been definitively proven. Other researchers suggest the phenomenon resulted from wind patterns, the heating of trapped moisture, or even deliberate human manipulation by temple priests seeking to impress visitors. Some propose that the statue's porous stone could have harboured colonies of insects, whose synchronized movements created the sound, a biological orchestra performing at dawn. The mystery deepened dramatically around 199 CE, when Roman Emperor Septimius Severus ordered the statue repaired. Well-meaning engineers filled the cracks in the stone, restoring the colossus to its original grandeur. But their intervention had an unintended consequence. The singing stopped. Forever. The silence that followed was deafening. Pilgrims continued to visit hoping to hear the legendary song, but the statue remained mute. The divine voice of Memnon had been silenced by human hands. Some interpreted this as a bad omen, the gods withdrawing their blessing from a world that had lost its reverence for mystery. Medieval Arab historians recorded the silent colossi with a mixture of awe and melancholy. They preserved the ancient stories while adding their own interpretations. Some believed the statues were jinn trapped in stone by Solomon's magic. Others saw them as guardians of hidden treasure, their silence an eternal curse. European travellers of the 18th and 19th centuries rediscovered the colossi during the Great Age of Egyptian exploration. Napoleon's scholars documented them extensively, noting the countless inscriptions carved by ancient visitors. The mystery of their former song captured the romantic imagination of the era. Byron referenced them in his poetry. Early archaeologists speculated endlessly about the cause of the phenomenon. Modern acoustic analysis has attempted to recreate the conditions that might have produced the singing. Computer models suggest that thermal expansion could indeed generate sounds in the frequency range described by ancient witnesses. Laboratory tests on quartzite samples have demonstrated that the stone can produce musical tones under specific conditions, yet no one has successfully replicated the exact phenomenon described in ancient accounts. Some researchers have proposed that the earthquake damage was more extensive than previously thought, that the entire statue developed a complex network of internal cracks that functioned like an enormous wind instrument. Others suggest that the statue's base, partially buried and exposed to groundwater fluctuations, could have created the necessary conditions for sound production. The location itself adds another layer to the mystery. The western bank of the Nile was sacred to the ancient Egyptians, associated with death and rebirth. The Colossi faced east, toward the rising sun and the land of the living. They stood at the boundary between worlds, a liminal space where the extraordinary might naturally occur. Archaeological investigation has revealed tantalizing clues. Ancient graffiti near the singing statue includes detailed descriptions of the sound, providing a rare glimpse into how the phenomenon was actually experienced. Some inscriptions thank the statue for favourable omens received through its song. Others record the specific dates and times when the singing occurred, creating an inadvertent scientific record spanning centuries. Recently, seismic monitoring equipment placed near the colossi has detected minute vibrations within the stones, particularly during temperature changes. These oscillations occur at frequencies below human hearing, but they suggest that the statues remain acoustically active, even if silent to our ears. Perhaps the song continues, shifted beyond our perception. The restoration work of Septimius Severus has itself become a subject of study. Archaeological evidence suggests the repairs were extensive, involving not just crack filling but the addition of new stone blocks. This intervention fundamentally altered the statue's internal structure, explaining why the singing never resumed. The emperor's attempt to preserve the monument inadvertently destroyed its most remarkable feature. Cultural interpretations of the singing have evolved across millennia. What began as divine communication became, in later periods, a tourist attraction. What amazed the ancients became, for some modern observers, merely an interesting acoustic phenomenon. Yet the fundamental mystery remains: how did ancient Egyptian craftsmen create, intentionally or not, a structure capable of producing such extraordinary sounds? The colossi stand today as they have for 30 centuries, silent witnesses to the passage of time. The morning sun still strikes their faces, still warms the stone, still creates the thermal conditions that once produced their song. But the voice of Memnon remains forever stilled. Perhaps that silence is itself part of the mystery. The statues speak to us now not through sound, but through their enduring presence. They remind us that the ancient world was far stranger and more wonderful than we often imagine. They challenge our assumptions about what is possible, about the boundaries between the physical and the spiritual, between the explicable and the miraculous. The lost labyrinth of Hawara. In the heart of Egypt's Fayum oasis, where the fertile land meets the edge of the desert, lies a mystery that has confounded explorers, scholars and dreamers for over 2,000 years. Here, beneath the shifting sands and the relentless sun, is said to rest one of antiquity's greatest marvels, a structure so vast and complex that even the pyramids seemed simple by comparison. This is the lost labyrinth of Hawara. The story begins in the 5th century BCE, when the Greek historian Herodotus journeyed through Egypt and recorded what he saw. He wrote of a labyrinth near the pyramid of Amenemhat III, a pharaoh of the Middle Kingdom. Herodotus was not easily impressed, yet he claimed that the labyrinth surpassed even the pyramids. According to his account, it was a sprawling complex with 12 covered courts, an astonishing 3,000 rooms, and a bewildering maze of corridors, some above ground, others below. The walls, he said, were covered in exquisite carvings, and the ceilings were made of polished stone. He was so overwhelmed by its scale and intricacy that he doubted even a lifetime would suffice to explore it all. Other ancient writers echoed his awe. Strabo, the Roman geographer, visited centuries later and described a structure where palaces are joined together, all under one roof. Pliny the Elder wrote of winding passages and secret chambers, some said to house the tombs of sacred crocodiles, others the burial places of kings. Diodorus Siculus, another historian, insisted that the labyrinth was designed to confound both man and spirit, a place where the uninitiated would be hopelessly lost. But what was the purpose of this monumental maze? Was it a temple complex, a royal palace, or a necropolis for the elite? Some believed it was a cosmic symbol, a microcosm of the universe itself, meant to guide souls through the perils of the afterlife. Others saw it as a demonstration of royal power and architectural mastery, a statement to the world that Egypt's pharaohs could command not just stone and labour, but the very laws of order and chaos. Yet, despite the testimony of so many ancient witnesses, the labyrinth of Hawara has all but vanished. The sands have reclaimed its stones. The once mighty structure is now little more than a field of rubble beside the ruined pyramid of Amenemhat III. Its legend, however, has only grown. In the 19th century, as Egyptology blossomed, European explorers scoured the Fayum for any trace of the lost labyrinth. In 1888, the British archaeologist Flinders Petrie arrived at Hawara. Armed with little more than Herodotus's descriptions and an unyielding determination, he dug beneath the sand and found disappointment. The remains he uncovered, a jumble of mud brick walls and shattered columns, bore little resemblance to the wonders described by the ancients. Petrie concluded that the labyrinth had been systematically dismantled in antiquity, its stones hauled away to build other monuments, its secrets scattered to the winds, but some refused to accept this anticlimax. Over the years, new theories have emerged. Some suggest that the true labyrinth lies deeper still, buried beneath layers of debris and groundwater. In the 2000s, a team of Belgian and Egyptian researchers used ground-penetrating radar to scan the site. Their findings were tantalizing. Beneath the surface, they detected vast geometric patterns, rectilinear anomalies that do not match the natural geology of the area. Could these be the foundations of the lost labyrinth, waiting to be rediscovered? Others have speculated that the labyrinth's greatest treasures were not its walls, but its archives. Ancient accounts speak of a hall of records, a repository of sacred texts and royal decrees. Some believe that if the labyrinth is ever found, it might contain a library that rivals Alexandria, a cache of knowledge lost to history. This idea has inspired generations of seekers, from Victorian adventurers to modern fringe theorists, each hoping to unearth the secrets of a vanished civilization. Of course, skepticism abounds. Some Egyptologists argue that the ancient writers exaggerated, that the labyrinth was impressive but not miraculous, and that time and memory have inflated its scale. Others point to the lack of surviving artifacts or inscriptions as evidence that the labyrinth was never as grand as described. Yet the mystery persists, fueled by the enduring allure of the unknown. In recent years, satellite imagery and remote sensing have revealed further anomalies in the landscape around Hawara. Subtle depressions and outlines in the earth suggest the presence of man-made structures long since buried. Archaeological teams continue to petition for permission to excavate, but the site is fragile, threatened by rising groundwater and encroaching development. The labyrinth, if it still exists, remains tantalizingly out of reach. Meanwhile, the stories endure. Locals speak of strange echoes beneath the ground, of lost passages where the air grows cool and the light fades away. Some claim to have found fragments of ancient walls, carved with symbols no one can decipher. Others dismiss these tales as mere legend, the wishful thinking of a land steeped in history. Yet the question remains, if the labyrinth of Hawara ever truly existed, what became of it? Was it destroyed by conquerors, swallowed by the earth, or deliberately concealed to protect its secrets? Or is it possible that the greatest labyrinth was not a place, but an idea? A symbol of the human desire to explore, to understand, and to solve the mysteries of our past. The Saqqara bird. In 1898, deep within the limestone mastaba tomb of Padi Imen at Saqqara, French archaeologist Victor Loret made a discovery that would puzzle researchers for over a century. Among the typical grave goods, pottery, jewellery and religious artefacts dating to around 200 BCE, lay a small wooden object that defied easy categorization. Carved from sycamore wood and measuring just 14 centimetres in length, this artifact bore an unmistakable resemblance to a bird in flight. Yet its proportions, its aerodynamic features, and its uncanny similarity to modern aircraft have sparked one of archaeology's most contentious debates. Was this simply a stylized bird figurine, or evidence that the ancient Egyptians understood principles of flight that would not be discovered again until the 20th century? The object that came to be known as the Saqqara bird was initially catalogued and stored with little fanfare at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, where it remained largely ignored for decades. To the archaeologists of the early 20th century, it appeared to be nothing more than a bird effigy, perhaps representing a falcon or ibis, common motifs in Egyptian religious art. The wooden figurine was filed away among thousands of other artifacts, its true significance unrecognised until a chance encounter in 1969 changed everything. Dr. Khalil Messiha, an Egyptian physician with a passion for aviation history, was visiting the museum when he spotted the bird in a display case. What struck him immediately was not its resemblance to any known bird species, but its remarkable similarity to modern aircraft design. The object's wings were perfectly straight and horizontal, not swept backward as in real birds. Its proportions seemed calculated for aerodynamic efficiency rather than biological accuracy. Most intriguingly, it possessed what appeared to be a vertical tail fin, a feature found in aircraft but never in any living bird. Messiha's observations launched a controversy that continues to this day. Was the Saqqara bird simply an artistic representation of a bird, perhaps stylized according to ancient Egyptian aesthetic conventions? Or did it represent something far more extraordinary, evidence that the ancient Egyptians had discovered and understood principles of aerodynamics that modern science credits to the Wright brothers and their contemporaries? The physical characteristics of the artifact support both interpretations, depending on one's perspective. Measured objectively, the Saqqara bird displays features that are remarkably consistent with modern aircraft design. Its wingspan is proportional to its length in ratios that aeronautical engineers recognize as optimal for gliding flight. The cross-section of its wings approximates an airfoil shape, with a curved upper surface and flatter lower surface that would generate lift according to Bernoulli's principle. The body is streamlined and symmetric, reducing drag and improving stability. Most compelling to aviation enthusiasts is the presence of the vertical tail fin. This feature serves no purpose in representing a real bird. Indeed, it makes the object less bird-like rather than more so. However, a vertical stabilizer is crucial for aircraft stability, preventing yaw and maintaining directional control during flight. Its presence on a 2,200-year-old wooden carving seems to suggest knowledge of aerodynamic principles that should have been unknown to ancient craftsmen. Critics of the aircraft theory point out that the object lacks several features essential for powered flight. There is no evidence of a propeller, jet, or any other form of propulsion system. The wings show no provision for control surfaces like ailerons or flaps that would be necessary for maneuvered flight. The object appears to be carved from a single piece of wood, with no moving parts or complex mechanisms that would suggest advanced technological understanding. Furthermore, skeptics argue that the bird's unusual features can be explained by the artistic conventions and religious symbolism of Ptolemaic Egypt. The straight wings might represent the Egyptian artistic preference for geometric forms and symbolic rather than naturalistic representation. The vertical tail could be a stylized representation of a bird's tail feathers, exaggerated for artistic effect or religious significance. However, proponents of the aircraft theory have conducted extensive aerodynamic testing to support their claims. In the 1970s, several researchers created scaled-up models of the Saqqara bird and subjected them to wind tunnel testing. The results were startling. The models demonstrated excellent gliding characteristics, with stable flight patterns and impressive lift-to-drag ratios. Some models could glide for considerable distances when launched from sufficient height, performing better than many modern glider designs. Computer modelling has taken this analysis further, using sophisticated aerodynamic simulation software to analyse the bird's flight characteristics. These digital studies have confirmed that the object's proportions and design features would indeed produce stable, efficient gliding flight. The wing loading, aspect ratio, and centre of gravity are all optimised for soaring performance in ways that seem unlikely to be accidental. The material composition of the Saqqara bird has provided additional clues about its intended function. Sycamore wood, from which it was carved, is relatively light but strong, properties that would be advantageous for a flying object but unnecessary for a purely decorative figurine. The wood shows signs of careful finishing and shaping, with attention to details that would affect aerodynamic performance but would be invisible in a display piece. Microscopic analysis of the surface has revealed tool marks consistent with precise carving techniques. The craftsmanship demonstrates sophisticated understanding of three-dimensional form and proportion. Some researchers have noted that certain details of the carving appear to prioritize functional aerodynamic considerations over aesthetic appeal, suggesting that performance rather than appearance was the primary concern. The archaeological context of the discovery has been scrutinized for additional clues about the object's purpose and significance. Padi Imen, in whose tomb the bird was found, appears to have been a priest or official of modest importance during the Ptolemaic period. His tomb contained no other obvious technological artifacts or items suggesting unusual scientific knowledge. However, this absence of context could support either interpretation. The bird might have been a unique technological artifact or simply one religious object among many. Recent investigations have focused on finding similar objects that might provide comparative evidence. Several other bird-like artifacts from various periods of Egyptian history have been identified, though none display the same combination of aerodynamic features as the Saqqara bird. Some show conventional bird-like proportions, while others appear more stylized but lack the distinctive vertical tail fin and precise wing geometry. The broader question of ancient Egyptian technological capabilities has complicated the debate. While the Egyptians demonstrated remarkable engineering skills in their monuments and mechanical devices, there is no historical record of any interest in or understanding of flight. Their art and literature contain no references to flying machines, aerial vehicles, or anything resembling powered flight. This absence of supporting evidence has been used to argue against the aircraft interpretation. However, proponents point out that absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Ancient Egyptian records are incomplete, and many texts have been lost over the millennia. Furthermore, if flight technology existed, it might have been considered so sacred or dangerous that it was deliberately concealed from public knowledge, preserved only among a small elite of priests or craftsmen. The influence of contemporary context on interpretation has been acknowledged by researchers on both sides of the debate. The aircraft theory gained prominence during the 1960s and 1970s, a period of intense public interest in UFOs, ancient astronauts, and alternative archaeology. Critics argued that this cultural moment influenced how the artifact was perceived and interpreted, leading researchers to see aircraft features where none actually existed. Conversely, supporters argue that mainstream archaeology's resistance to the aircraft theory reflects institutional bias against any interpretation that challenges conventional understanding of ancient capabilities. They contend that the academic establishment is unwilling to consider evidence that might revolutionize our understanding of technological development in antiquity. Experimental archaeology has attempted to resolve the debate through practical testing. Several researchers have built full-size reproductions of the Saqqara bird using ancient materials and techniques. These experiments have yielded mixed results. Some models have demonstrated impressive gliding performance, while others have proven unstable or difficult to control. The variations in results may reflect differences in construction techniques, materials, or testing conditions. One particularly intriguing experiment involved creating a reproduction with a horizontal tail surface added to the vertical fin. This modification, based on the theory that the original artifact had lost a horizontal stabilizer over time, produced a model with significantly improved flight characteristics. The enhanced version could achieve controlled gliding flight over considerable distances, lending some support to the aircraft interpretation. The question of scale has also entered the debate. Even if the Saqqara bird represents a model aircraft, it would not necessarily indicate that the Egyptians built full-size flying machines. The object might represent a toy, a religious symbol, or a scale model used for testing aerodynamic principles. However, any of these interpretations would still suggest sophisticated understanding of flight mechanics that predates modern aviation by millennia. Chemical analysis of the wood has attempted to determine the artifact's age more precisely and identify any unusual treatments or modifications. The results have confirmed the object's antiquity, but have not revealed any evidence of special processing that might indicate technological purpose beyond normal preservation techniques used for religious artifacts. The role of religious symbolism in ancient Egyptian culture has provided an alternative framework for interpreting the Saqqara bird's unusual features. Birds held profound spiritual significance for the Egyptians, representing the soul's journey to the afterlife, divine messengers, and various aspects of solar worship. The bird's distinctive proportions might reflect theological rather than technological considerations, with each feature carrying specific religious meaning. Recent discoveries in aviation archaeology have provided new perspectives on ancient understanding of flight. Researchers have identified various historical attempts at human flight that predate the Wright brothers, demonstrating that interest in aviation has deep historical roots. While none of these earlier efforts achieved sustained powered flight, they show that aerodynamic principles were being explored and understood much earlier than previously thought. The impact of digital technology on the debate has been significant. High-resolution 3D scanning has allowed for precise analysis of the Saqqara bird's geometry, while computational fluid dynamics software can model its aerodynamic performance with unprecedented accuracy. These tools have generally supported the observation that the object would indeed fly well, though they cannot definitively resolve the question of whether this was intentional. International collaboration has brought together experts from archaeology, aeronautical engineering, and Egyptian history to examine the artifact from multiple perspectives. These interdisciplinary studies have enriched understanding of the object while highlighting the complexity of interpreting ancient artifacts that don't fit conventional categories. The preservation and display of the Saqqara bird at the Egyptian Museum has become part of its story. The artifact is now one of the museum's most popular exhibits, attracting visitors curious about its potential aeronautical significance. However, its fame has also made it difficult to conduct further scientific testing, as the museum is understandably reluctant to subject this unique artifact to potentially damaging analysis. Modern attempts to recreate ancient flight have expanded beyond the Saqqara bird to examine other cultures and artifacts that might indicate early understanding of aerodynamics. These studies have identified similar mysteries in other parts of the world, suggesting that the question of ancient flight capabilities may be broader than initially recognized. The mysterious Light of Ra rituals. The first golden ray pierces the darkness above the Great Pyramid of Giza. For a brief moment, the limestone casing stones, long since stripped away, would have blazed like a beacon across the desert, reflecting the sun's glory back to the heavens. But this daily resurrection of light held secrets far more profound than mere architectural brilliance. Deep within the pyramid's heart, in chambers designed with mathematical precision that still confounds modern engineers, ancient priests once conducted rituals so sacred, so closely guarded, that their true nature vanished with the pharaohs themselves. These were the Light of Ra ceremonies. Mentioned only in fragmentary papyri and cryptic hieroglyphic inscriptions, these rituals represented the most esoteric practices of ancient Egyptian religion. They were not public spectacles performed in temple courtyards for the masses, but intimate communions between pharaoh, priest, and deity, conducted in the pyramid's inner sanctum as the first light of dawn penetrated its carefully calculated passages. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, built around 2580 BCE, was not merely a tomb but a sophisticated instrument of solar worship. Its internal architecture reveals an obsessive attention to astronomical alignment. The king's chamber lies precisely positioned so that during the winter solstice, a shaft of sunlight would travel through the descending passage, penetrate the grand gallery, and illuminate the granite sarcophagus at the exact moment of sunrise. Ancient texts speak cryptically of these moments. The pyramid texts, carved into the walls of later pharaohs' burial chambers, reference the daily birth of Ra within the sacred mountain, and describe the pharaoh as becoming one with the sun god through the reception of the first light. Papyrus fragments from the Middle Kingdom period mention priests called the Watchers of Ra's Awakening, whose sole duty was to conduct these dawn rituals. But what exactly occurred during these ceremonies? Hieroglyphic inscriptions found in the pyramid's passages suggest a complex choreography of movement, chanting, and the manipulation of crystalline objects. References to stones that capture the god's breath and vessels that hold the morning fire hint at the use of specialized instruments designed to focus and concentrate the incoming sunlight. Some texts mention the sacred mirror of Electrum that could bind Ra's essence with immortal form. The Greek historian Herodotus, visiting Egypt in the 5th century BCE, recorded rumours of secret rites performed at dawn within the Great Pyramids. He wrote of priests who claimed they could speak with Ra himself during these ceremonies, receiving divine guidance for the pharaoh's rule. Local guides told him of lights that appeared within the pyramid chambers, not torch flames, but cold fire that needed no fuel. Roman authors expanded on these accounts. Pliny the Elder described meeting an Egyptian priest who claimed his ancestors had participated in rituals where the pyramid itself became alive with divine radiance. Plutarch wrote of mysterious lights that appeared within pyramid chambers during certain astronomical alignments, phenomena he attributed to the gods manifesting their presence in stone. Modern investigation has revealed tantalizing physical evidence. High-resolution imaging of the Great Pyramid's interior has detected unusual electromagnetic signatures within the king's chamber during sunrise hours. These readings spike dramatically at the winter solstice, suggesting that the chamber's granite composition may indeed interact with solar radiation in extraordinary ways. The granite sarcophagus itself presents puzzles. Recent analysis reveals it was carved from a single block of red granite containing unusually high concentrations of quartz crystals. When subjected to pressure or temperature changes, quartz can generate piezoelectric effects, producing small electrical charges. Could the daily thermal expansion caused by sunlight have created electrical phenomena that the ancients interpreted as divine manifestation? Acoustic studies have added another layer to the mystery. The king's chamber exhibits remarkable resonant properties, with a fundamental frequency that matches the pyramid's base dimensions. Sound experiments have demonstrated that certain frequencies can cause the granite sarcophagus to vibrate, producing haunting tones that seem to emerge from the stone itself. Ancient texts frequently mention the voice of Ra speaking from within the sacred chamber, and archaeological evidence suggests the rituals involved more than just solar observation. Traces of exotic materials have been found in pyramid passages, fragments of meteoric iron, crystalline formations not native to Egypt, and residues of substances that remain unidentified. Some researchers theorize these materials were chosen for their unique interactions with electromagnetic radiation. The precision of the pyramid's construction supports theories of sophisticated solar manipulation. The angle of the descending passage aligns perfectly with the star Thuban, which served as the North Pole star during the pyramid's construction. This alignment would have created a precise astronomical clock, allowing priests to time their rituals to celestial events with extraordinary accuracy. Medieval Arab chroniclers preserved fragments of knowledge about these practices. Al-Makrizi, writing in the 15th century, recorded legends of chambers that filled with divine light without lamps, and described rituals where the pharaoh would enter as mortal man and emerge transformed. He noted that local Bedouins avoided the pyramids at dawn, believing them haunted by lights that moved of their own will. European explorers of the 18th and 19th centuries reported strange phenomena during their pyramid investigations. Giovanni Belzoni, the Italian adventurer who first penetrated the Great Pyramid's upper chambers, wrote of experiencing brilliant flashes of light within the king's chamber during dawn hours, even when no torches were present. His Arabic guides refused to enter the chamber at sunrise, claiming it was the hour when Ra walks among the stones. Napoleon's expedition included scientists who attempted to document pyramid anomalies systematically. Their notes, largely suppressed at the time, described unusual optical effects within the chambers, shimmering distortions in the air, and sudden illuminations that appeared without apparent source. Some expedition members reported feeling electrical sensations when touching the granite surfaces during dawn hours. Modern electromagnetic surveys have detected complex field patterns within the Great Pyramid, particularly concentrated around the king's chamber. These fields fluctuate in response to solar activity, suggesting the pyramid's mass may act as a form of electromagnetic antenna. The specific properties of the limestone and granite construction could theoretically create conditions for unusual electrical phenomena. Recent experiments with pyramid-shaped structures have yielded intriguing results. Scale models built with precise dimensional ratios to the Great Pyramid have demonstrated the ability to focus electromagnetic energy in their central chambers. When aligned to receive direct sunlight, these models have produced measurable electrical effects and unusual optical phenomena. The Light of Ra rituals may have ceased around 2150 BCE, during the chaotic First Intermediate period when central authority collapsed and the old religious practices were abandoned. Later, pharaohs built smaller, less astronomically sophisticated pyramids, suggesting the specialized knowledge required for these ceremonies had been lost. Some researchers propose that the rituals were discontinued deliberately, their power deemed too dangerous for a weakening dynasty. Others suggest that the precise astronomical alignments gradually shifted due to precession, making the ceremonies less effective and eventually impossible to perform correctly. The mystery persists in the pyramid's silent chambers. Each dawn, sunlight still penetrates the ancient passages, still illuminates the empty sarcophagus, still activates whatever electromagnetic properties the builders embedded in their creation. But the priests who knew how to interpret these phenomena, who understood the sacred technology of the light of Ra, have vanished into the sands of time. The dancing, statues and moving stones. The granite guardian stands motionless in the shadow of Karnak's towering pylons, its obsidian eyes fixed eternally eastward toward the rising sun. Yet the limestone blocks beneath its feet tell a different story, worn smooth not by wind or rain but by the slow, inexorable shifting of 20 tons of carved stone. Deep grooves score the temple floor in perfect arcs, as if this colossal figure had spent centuries slowly turning to survey its domain. The ancient Egyptians called it Jed Ankh, the living pillar, and for good reason. This is not the only statue that moved. Throughout Egypt's sacred precincts, from the temples of Abu Simbel to the ruins of Memphis, evidence of ambulatory statuary challenges our understanding of ancient religious practice. These are not subtle displacements that might be explained by settling foundations or seismic activity, but dramatic relocations documented with meticulous precision by generations of priests who considered such movements divine communications of the highest order. The mechanics of impossibility reveal themselves in the details. At Dender, a 30-foot granite obelisk bears chisel marks around its base, not decorative hieroglyphs, but utilitarian grooves that suggest the monument was designed to rotate. The stone platform beneath shows corresponding wear patterns, creating what archaeologists now recognize as a massive bearing surface. Yet no conventional explanation accounts for the forces that could have turned such a monument, particularly given its position within a sealed chamber accessible only through passages too narrow to accommodate the machinery necessary for such manipulation. The mystery deepens when we consider the sophistication of the movements themselves. These were not random displacements, but purposeful reorientations that followed complex patterns. Temple records from the Middle Kingdom describe statues that would turn to face different cardinal directions according to seasonal cycles, agricultural schedules, and astronomical events. A granite sphinx at Memphis was recorded as rotating clockwise during the Nile's annual flood, then reversing direction as waters receded, a choreographed response to environmental changes that suggests remarkable engineering precision. Perhaps most perplexing are the cases of statuary translocation, statues found in completely different chambers from their documented positions. The Temple of Philae contains detailed inventories describing the movement of sacred barks between chambers overnight, despite passages that would require the careful disassembly and reconstruction of multi-ton sculptures. Priests recorded these relocations not as supernatural events, but as routine divine activities requiring specific ritual responses. The engineering challenges are staggering. Modern experiments attempting to recreate ancient statue movement have required sophisticated hydraulic systems, precisely calculated counterweights, and teams of skilled operators. Yet ancient accounts describe movements occurring during periods when temples were sealed and unattended, with only the night watch maintaining vigilance from outside the sacred precincts. Investigation of temple foundations has revealed elaborate underground infrastructures that may hold clues to these mechanical mysteries. Beneath many sites lie complex networks of chambers, channels and voids that extend far beyond what would be necessary for drainage or foundation stability. Some researchers theorize these spaces house sophisticated machinery, bronze gear trains, weighted levers, and hydraulic amplification systems that could generate enormous mechanical advantage from our relatively small inputs. The hydraulic theory gains credibility when examined alongside Egypt's seasonal flooding patterns. Temple architects demonstrated profound understanding of water dynamics, creating structures that could harness the Nile's annual surge to power mills, elevators, and irrigation systems. The same principles could theoretically activate statue movement mechanisms using seasonal water pressure to trigger carefully timed mechanical sequences. Yet hydraulic systems alone cannot explain all documented cases. Many moving statues were located in temples built on elevated ground, far from any water source that could provide hydraulic power. These installations suggest alternative mechanisms, perhaps counterweight systems activated by temperature changes, magnetic anomalies responding to solar activity, or acoustic resonance triggered by specific sound frequencies generated during religious ceremonies. The acoustic hypothesis presents fascinating possibilities. Recent analysis of temple architecture reveals sophisticated understanding of sound propagation and resonance. Many chambers containing moving statuary exhibit extraordinary acoustic properties, amplifying certain frequencies while dampening others. Ritual chanting performed in specific locations could theoretically generate standing wave patterns capable of activating mechanical systems through harmonic vibration. Magnetic forces offer another potential explanation. Many Egyptian statues were carved from magnetite-rich granite that could interact with the Earth's magnetic field. Variations in magnetic declination, influenced by solar activity and seasonal changes, might create forces sufficient to cause gradual statue rotation over extended periods. Ancient Egyptian knowledge of magnetism, demonstrated in their sophisticated navigation techniques and mineral processing, suggests they could have deliberately exploited these phenomena. The thermal expansion theory proposes that Egypt's extreme temperature variations could power statue movement through carefully designed mechanical linkages. Bronze expansion joints embedded within statue bases could accumulate thermal energy during hot days and release it during cool nights, creating cyclical forces that gradually shift heavy objects. Archaeological evidence of bronze fittings within statue foundations supports this hypothesis. Most intriguingly, some researchers propose that statue movement was achieved through biological mechanisms. Certain temple complexes contain evidence of extensive root systems from sacred trees that were deliberately cultivated within the temple structure. As these massive root networks expanded and contracted seasonally, they could have generated forces sufficient to move statuary through underground mechanical linkages. The sacred sycamores of Karnak, some over 1,000 years old, may have served as biological engines powering temple machinery. The cessation of statue movement during the Roman period correlates with systematic changes in temple maintenance practices. Roman administrators, focused on administrative efficiency rather than religious mystery, likely dismantled or neglected the complex mechanical systems that powered these phenomena. As underground machinery corroded and hydraulic channels silted up, the statues gradually lost their mobility. Contemporary analysis of statue bases has revealed sophisticated bearing surfaces, bronze bushings, and carefully calculated weight distributions that would facilitate movement under specific conditions. These engineering features, invisible to casual observation, suggest that statue mobility was not accidental, but integral to temple function. The ancient Egyptians may have created the world's first programmable mechanical systems, structures that responded automatically to environmental changes through ingenious combinations of hydraulic, thermal, and magnetic principles. The implications extend beyond mere engineering achievement. If Egyptian priests could indeed orchestrate statue movement through natural forces, they possess technological sophistication that challenges conventional understanding of ancient capabilities. These were not primitive attempts at deception, but sophisticated demonstrations of mastery over physical principles that we are only beginning to rediscover. The silent statues of modern Egypt guard their secrets well. Their mechanisms lie buried beneath millennia of sand and stone, their operators long departed to the afterlife they served so faithfully. Yet their legacy endures in the worn grooves beneath their feet and the impossible positions in which they still stand. Eternal testament to human ingenuity and the thin boundary between the mechanical and the miraculous. The questions we began with remain unanswered. They may always remain unanswered. But in asking them, in exploring these enigmas with wonder rather than certainty, we honour the curiosity and ambition of those who created them. We become part of the eternal human quest to understand, to discover, to reach beyond the boundaries of the known into the infinite realm of possibility. Until then, the mysteries endure, the questions remain, and the desert keeps its eternal vigil, guardian of secrets that span the ages, keeper of knowledge that bridges the gap between what was, what is, and what might yet be discovered in the endless quest to understand our place in the cosmos. The ancient Egyptians built for eternity. In their mysteries they achieved it.